Everybody, we're going to call tonight's meeting of the school board to order. It's Tuesday, January 11th. Thanks for joining us. We're going to start off with the flag salute, and Trustee Ramirez, if you'll lead us. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Item 2, adoption of the agenda as submitted. This is for possible action.
I'll move that we accept the agenda as submitted.
Second, Wilkie.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Stacy. Any board discussion on this item? Seeing none, any public comment related to this item? Seeing none, any remote public comment, Renee?
No, Mr. Cassiopo.
Thank you. Board, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Item 3, Superintendent's report. This is for information only. Superintendent Stokes.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board, members of the community, welcome. It is good to be back in school. I enjoyed the break during the holiday season, as did many of our students and staff. I'd just like to say welcome back. Coming back to school, however, has given us some new cause for concern. Schools and departments around the district are reporting a spike in student and staff absences. The illnesses are attributed to a variety of maladies, including COVID-19. You may have seen in today's newspaper, Washoe County School District on the front page noticed that they were considering going to full remote teaching because of the number of illnesses that they're experiencing. And we just heard this afternoon that Clark County School District has closed school for 2 days, and they are hoping that the 2-day school closure and the 3-day weekend will help to provide time for their staff and students to get better. And of course, one of the challenges with staff, of course, getting ill is we're not able to provide the services that we often do in our schools. So just a reminder that if you're feeling poorly, stay home. We don't want to spread illnesses, regardless of what it is, to others, and certainly include doing all of those activities that are good hygiene practices. And last item of my report tonight, Mr. Cassiopo, if you'd be kind enough just to join me down at the front. Members of the board, as you know, tonight's meeting is an annual occurrence where we will reorganize our school board. And this gives me an opportunity to recognize President Cassiopo for his service. It's been a tradition in our school district to give a nice plaque to our president and to thank him for the year's worth of service. I know President Cassiopo has been extremely easy to work with. He responds readily when I have questions or when I need some additional counsel. And through his activities, through his efforts, he truly is a friend to staff and students in our school district and can be called on really whenever in school-related issues. And I just wanted to thank him for his interaction with me during the past year and thank him for his service to our board and to our community. So thank you, Mr. President.
Sure. So, oh. I'll just keep this short. I just wanted to thank the public, the students, and the board. This is my 9th year on the school board. So it's been a good journey. I still have a few more years to go, and then I'm termed out. But I just wanted to, again, this has been an interesting year. Lots of opinions about things, divided opinions, us included. And, it's an interesting time, but it's been a time for the public to get more involved with the board, and for that, I'm grateful. I think anytime we can get public involvement, get students and staff up here to speak with us and help navigate through these kinds of things, I think I think that's all good. So that's what we should be all about. I just want to thank the board. I enjoy working with all of you. I'm glad I still get to work with many of you for the next 3 years to wrap up my term. And being on the board this year has had some challenges to it, and I think everybody's acted in a professional manner, and I appreciate the way you've supported me and we've supported each other. So I just wanted to thank you, all of you and all of you.
Thank you, Mr. President. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Richard. I appreciate it. And I forgot to thank you, but thank you for, your guidance as well through this. It's certainly a team effort. So Ryan, Richard, Renee, thanks for all your help. Item 4, board reports. This is for information only. Do we have a representative from Carson High School here? Seeing that we don't, how about Pioneer? Seeing none. Nevada Association of School Boards update. I guess Mike or Laurel.
We don't have anything at this point.
And that's okay.
Just, we're not in Region 3 of the NIAA, but Humboldt, Nye, Elko, White Pine, there's 9 school districts in there. So there is an opportunity for a school board member to apply to be a representative on the NIAA Board of Controls. And so far, we have not had any applicants from board members. So if you have any friends in those counties that you think would be interested in serving the student athletes in the state of Nevada, encourage them to get in contact with myself or Deb Oliver and submit an application so that we can get somebody appointed for that position.
Okay, thank you. We'll do board announcements. So Mike, why don't we start with you?
So Mark Twain Elementary School wants to wish everyone a Happy New Year, and they would like parents to know that annual WIDA testing is going to begin on January 24th at Mark Twain, and so they're encouraging parents to send their kids to school unless they are sick. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Stacy.
I just wanted to thank the NJROTC for their work with the Angel Tree, with giving over $5,000 worth of gifts to families and making their holidays so genuinely great. So to take time out of their busy schedules in the holidays was well appreciated and well needed.
Great. Thank you. Don.
No report for me tonight. Just Happy New Year.
Okay, thank you. Lupe.
So from Empire Elementary School, they have good news for us. They received a $20,000 grant from the Office of Science and Innovation Technology, and they will be using that money to provide a field trip for the entire school. And then they also will be taking the children and the families to a tour to the museum, and this will be a closed event. So it sounds really, really exciting, very, very educational for the entire families. Silica Elementary School, they have a meeting on the 13th of January to go over the results of the survey to determine if they will continue with the standard student attire. And they're finishing up the last few winter map testing for the kids who were absent during the break. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Laurel.
Dr. Ward from Fremont and Mr. Brown from Fritch would like to wish everyone a Happy New Year, and they are looking forward to 2022. And just as that's my report on the schools, but I just wanted to give a report and a shout out to all of the efforts that our teachers put in last year. I had the opportunity to visit with my son who was home this summer break from his first semester at college and several of his friends, and in asking them how their first semester went. They all had very good experiences in their first semesters at college. One of the boys said it was his easiest semester in a long time. And I quote, he said, the AP classes at Carson High are cracked. They totally had me prepared and ready to do school. So last year was a difficult year for those kids being in the hybrid, and I'm hearing good things from the kids that graduated and that are continuing on. So I wanted to thank them for their efforts last year.
Great, thank you. Rich?
Yes, at Carson Middle School, they'll be completing their winter map testing tomorrow, starting in the morning, and then they'll continue Thursday, January 13th. The students will spend a 2-hour block in the morning in their encore class for the testing. After that, they'll go to the regular classes, and they'll continue on through the day and be released at the regular time. That's my report from Carson Middle School. Then at Boardwick, small report here. They just want to remind everybody that there's no school on Monday, January 17th. And then early release day is January 24th at 2 p.m. And the second quarter, they want to remind everybody that ends on January 14th. And the report cards will be going home on January 28th. And that's the only report I have for them.
Great, thank you. And for me, I apologize, I don't have a report. I was sick over the holiday and I'm still catching up. So with that, we're going to move on to, I'm sorry, do we have any association reports? Is it later in the agenda? I'm sorry, okay, it is. I'm used to seeing it after this. So, okay, we're going to move on to item 5. Discussion and possible action on election of officers of the Board of Trustees, including Board President, Vice President, and Clerk for the ensuing year. This is for possible action. And the way this works for everybody is this meeting, so you can hear me a little better. This meeting is when we do board nominations. It just makes sure we get the next chain of leadership in place. And so the board's gonna make nominations, and this is a board activity, but it is an action item, so we will take public comment. So anyway, the way this is gonna work is nominations will be made. President will ask whether nominee accepts nomination. President asks whether there's any further nominations. If none, the president announces nominations for president, announces that the nominations are then closed. And then we'll announce that the president announces that whoever is nominated has been nominated to serve as president of the board for the ensuing year. The president will ask for a motion to appoint a candidate. And if a motion is made, seeks a second. Once a second is done, we'll go to board comment, public comment, and so forth. We need a majority of the board. 4 votes is required for that election. And if no candidate receives 4 votes on the first ballot, we'll repeat the process. So with that, I'm going to open it up at this time to nominations for Carson City Board of Trustees President.
I move that I nominate Richard Varner as board president.
Okay, we have a motion by Trustee Walker. Sorry, who was the second by? Laurel? Okay, thank you. Okay, motion and a second. Do we have any board discussion? Rich, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other nominations from the board? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close nominations. And I'll announce that Richard Varner has been nominated to serve as president of the board for the ensuing year. And I did this a little out of order, I apologize, but we have a motion, we have a second. Any additional board discussion? I kind of jumbled that a little bit, but am I all right?
Just a little bit, just so it's clear. I think you had a nomination.
Oh, you're
and
right,
Somebody
you're
seconded
right.
the nomination. I think now you need a motion to appoint.
So now we have a candidate, so now we need a motion to appoint. So do we have a motion to appoint Richard Varner?
I move that we appoint Richard Varner as board president.
Thank you. Do we have, okay, we have a second by trustee Crossman. Any further board discussion? Seeing none, any public comment on this item? Seeing none, Renee, do we have any remote public comment?
No, Mr. Cassiopo.
Okay, thank you. Back to the board. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do we have any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Richard, congratulations.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
We're now going to move on to Vice President and Clerk, and for that, I'm going to, at this point, step down as President and turn the meeting over to Trustee Varner. President Varner.
Thank you. It's an honor to be your president for this coming year. Thank you. We'll go ahead and now accept nominations for the vice president. Any nominations for vice president?
I'll nominate Laurel Crossman as vice president.
Second, Wilkie.
Would you accept that nomination? Okay. Then we have the nomination for Laurel Crossman for vice president. And I guess now we'd need a motion to,
Sorry, Mr. President, you need to check if there are any further nominations.
I'm sorry, any further nominations? Seeing none, then I guess we'll move on to the motion. Somebody want to make a motion?
I can make a motion that Laurel Crossman be vice president for 2022.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a second. Any public comment? Seeing none. Any remote public
No,
comment?
Mr. Varner, thank you.
We'll call for a vote now. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Seeing no negative votes, congratulations, you are now the vice president. Now we'll move on thank you. We'll move on now for the nomination for clerk.
I'd like to nominate Lupe Ramirez for clerk.
Okay,
I'll
we
second
have
that.
Lupe Romero, and who's the second?
Joe.
Joe. Okay. Any further nominations? Seeing none. Lupe, would you accept the clerk position?
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you. Now, we would need a motion to appoint Lupe.
I move that we appoint Lupe Ramirez as our clerk for this coming year.
We have a second? Any public comment? Any remote public comment?
No, Mr. Varner, thank you.
Okay, seeing none either way. Now we'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing no opposition? Congratulations, Lupe. You are now the clerk. Very good. Now we're going to move on to item number, let's see, 6. And it's discussion, possible action on designation of a day, place, and time for regular meeting of the Board of Trustees for the ensuing year. Historically, what we've done is we've had the second and fourth Tuesday of the month for the meeting date, and at 7 o'clock in the evening, and they're usually held here at the boardroom. There are times when there's extenuating circumstances for special board meetings that may be announced throughout the year at a different time, maybe a different place. So do we have any discussion on this by the board?
A question.
would-
Oh,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Mike brought it up
Several
this-
meetings
a
ago.
couple different times, but I think it was in December. Several boards have moved across the state have moved to having one meeting a month. And is that something that this board would be willing to entertain?
Mike, did you have anything?
Yeah, I think that it would greatly reduce the amount of time our staff is spending in these late night meetings. I think anyone who is near the district office on Wednesday mornings sees Mr. Stokes and Renee Cortez's car there well before anyone else, and they were here just as late, or, well, actually, I leave before them at all of these meetings. We also have staff members who have to drive in, and so I think that we could get down to one meeting a month and get our business done and do so at a reasonable time if we really focused in at the work we're tasked to do, and I think we could streamline our processes.
Any further discussion? Don?
Would we want to then maybe start meetings at 6 p.m.?
We could, or even 6:30.
Sorry.
Bill?
So I think that's valid, and I'd generally be in favor of it. I'm wondering if now's the time. My thought is we're going to be going through we're going through the process, but we're going to get deeper into the process of hiring a new superintendent. And with the new superintendent coming on board, and then a change, what could possibly be a big change on the board and whatnot, I'm thinking there's some things we could streamline during that time. And I guess what I'm saying is I'd probably like to stay at the 2 meetings a month for a little while and bring this back for consideration, because I think it's a valid point. I just not sure this is the right time.
Yeah, I happen to agree. I'd be opposed to going to once a month right now, because as Joe stated, we have the superintendent search going on. There's going to be a lot of work we have to do there. There's a lot of other work we have to do. We have to do a new superintendent evaluation, and there's different areas that we have to really concentrate on these next 6 months. And then when we do hire the new superintendent, I think it'd be important to have as much time with him or her as we can during that first 6 months. Then maybe at the beginning of next year, it may be the proper time to go to one a month. That's my feeling.
Yeah, I have the same concerns as you two, is I'm just not sure the timing's right. I'd love to go to one meeting a month, if we could get our business done in a timely manner. I'm worried we're gonna have to call special meetings to do the superintendent search stuff. And then when we do get a new superintendent, I think it would be, it's gonna be hard for the rest of us to get FaceTime with that superintendent other than meetings. The president and the vice president will do most of that, so I'm a little concerned but those are my concerns. So if it ends up that if we have the majority that wants to go with just one meeting, then I'll follow that lead too.
Richard, if I may, I had a question
Yes,
for
Joe.
Ryan. Ryan, is there I don't think there is, but is there any issue, given the premise that we were elected and we kind of had running meetings the way they are, if we go to one meeting a month, does that create any issues for us as elected officials changing our schedule?
So as elected officials, no. The only thing I was just trying to check real quick was whether there was anything in the policies that we might need to address if you change to one meeting. But as elected officials, there's nothing that prevents you from setting the schedule. That's in the discretion of the board.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion from the board?
My question would be, with the superintendent search, are we going to, because we've had special meetings in addition to our 2 meetings a month for the superintendent search, is the plan for this next coming year to make those meetings fall in line with our twice a month meetings, so that we limit the number of special meetings? Because I know that's an extra burden on staff as well.
The next meeting that we have, a special meeting, that'd be on the January 18th at 5 p.m. And then after that, we'll start into the interview process. And the 18th will be for the selection of the vetted candidates and setting the questions, time, and format for the interviews.
To clarify, we're already going to have an additional meeting outside of the 2 meetings a month so it
Yes.
it wouldn't impact it if we went to 1 meeting a month, because we're already going to have additional meetings for the superintendent
Yeah.
search.
We still have a lot of the work to do, though. Any discussion from the public? Come up, would please state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Jessie Tingle. If parents are willing to be here twice a month, I think it's okay for you guys to be here twice a month as well. With everything that's going on, just even in society right now, parents are finally involved in school board meetings, and it's very important, in my opinion. And the superintendent is also something that's important. So I think that 2 nights a month out of 30, 31 days is acceptable.
Thank you.
Pepsi Strasburg. I just wanted to bring to the attention of the board that Story County has 1 meeting a month, and they have a extended agenda. They sometimes run really late. If you think 9:30 is late, we're talking about 11:30. So, and this is a very challenging year for the school district, with a lot of new things happening, a new superintendent, new policies, reopening policy, which will be reviewed every 6 months. So there's a lot of items to be discussed, and cramming them on 1 night a month, it's going to be really long meetings for you all. So I would like to recommend and urge the board to stay with the 2-meeting format. Thank you.
Any remote comment? I'm sorry, Karen.
Okay, there we are. Karen Stevens for the record, and I would like to recommend that we stay at 2 meetings a month, because as much as I love, coming here late at night in the cold, it's just too much to do, I think, to scooch it into 1 night a month. So that's my vote.
Miles Humphreys for the record. I absolutely agree with 2 meetings a month. In this ever-changing landscape in which we got going on with every stinking health condition and situation that's going on out there, there needs to be 2, because things change on a whim, and plus it gives you guys more flexibility to also adhere or not to adhere to the bogus things that are going on in our society. So I think if it's 2, it's going to be better for the children, better for the parents, and better for everybody. 1, not so much. So, thank you.
Thank you. Joy?
Joy Trushinsky for the record. I support 2 meetings a month. I think there's too much going on in this state, in this country, and in this county, that we have to, we need time to discuss, the things that are happening. Thank you very much.
Any further comment? We may got a little bit out of order here, but this is an action item, so if there's a motion to be made, does anybody want to make a motion?
Mr. President, you might want to check one time for remote comment.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Varner, there's no public comment.
Thank you. Like I said, this is an action item, so if somebody wants to make a motion.
I move that, except as otherwise noted due to special circumstances, the Carson City School District Board of Trustees designate the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of the month as the regular meeting days, 6 p.m. for legally allowed closed sessions, and 7 p.m. for open session in the Robert Kroll Boardroom of Carson City Community Center, 851 East William Street, Carson City, Nevada.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second? Second by Joe. Like I said, is there any other discussion by the board on this motion?
Just for the record to reflect, I know Lyon County also does one meeting a month, and that may be something, if this is of interest to our board to look into, for the future, maybe we can, bring back a report from those counties that we know that do one meeting a month and ask how their agendas look.
Yeah, I think if I can, if we decide to go that way, I think this, keeping it the way it is for now gives us time to talk about how we might refresh our agendas and what might change, so we're not, if we go once a month, we're not here till midnight, because I think that's there's pros and cons with everything, but I think it's a valid point, and I think it deserves looking into. And as I said, I just think, maybe now's not the right time, but
Yeah.
I'd like to explore it.
I agree. I think it's worth exploring in the future. Any further public comment? Any online further comment?
No, Mr. Varner.
Okay, we have a motion. I'll call for a vote now. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Got 6 in favor, 1 opposed. The motion carries. Okay, we're going to move on to discussion and possible action on the annual adoption and reaffirmation of existing bylaws and policies of the Board of Trustees, and this is for possible action. I think everybody has pretty good knowledge of the bylaws and policies and procedures. Is there anybody who would like to make a motion on this?
I move that the Carson City School Board of Trustees approve the adoption and reaffirmation of existing bylaws and policies.
Do we have a second? Any board discussion on the motion? Any public comment on the motion? Seeing none? Any remote public comment?
No, Mr. Varner.
Having none on the remote, I'll go ahead and call for a vote. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. My mic's falling apart here, I'm sorry. We'll move on to item number 8, which is discussion and possible action on annual authorization for the Carson City School District to apply for and manage federal, state, local, foundation, and private funding, including but not limited to A, programs authorized under the Every Student Succeeds Act of 2015 to include Title I, Title II, Title III, and Title IV. B, Public Law 94-142, the Individuals with Disability Act and Disability and Education Act. C, Public Law 109-270, the Carl Perkins Vocational Education Act. And D, pre-kindergarten. E, nutrition. And F, state career and technical education. And this is for possible action. And I believe Mr. Stokes is going to do a presentation.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. As you know, these are items that, programs actually, for which the school district receives monies from both the federal and the state government. We manage these programs, and they provide significant funding for us during each school year. We, as a staff, would recommend that the board approve these items so that we can continue these programs within our school district. And I believe the language that we would desire for these programs are in your packet. And we'd be happy to answer any questions about any of these programs if you have further questions.
Is there any questions for Mr. Stokes? Seeing none, do we have a motion? Okay, Joe.
I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees designate the superintendent, associate superintendent of educational services, director of fiscal services, and the director of grants and special projects as the authorized representatives for any and all federal, local, foundation, private funding, and state grants.
Second.
Second by Don. Any board discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Any public comment? Seeing none. Any remote public comment?
No, Mr. Varner?
Seeing none, we'll go ahead and call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Stokes. Turn the page here. Move on to item number 9. This is a discussion of possible action on the appointment of trustees to serve on various committees and associations, including the following for the ensuing year. And this is for possible action. What we have nominations for director on the Nevada Association of School Boards, the alternate director of the NASB, member of the Carson City Parks and Rec Committee, the Debt Committee, Partnership Carson City, legislative liaison, representative to the Superintendent School Naming Committee, and representative to the Superintendent's Joint Advisory Committee, representative to Carson City Schools Foundation, and representative to Student Attendance Review Board, and a representative on the Emergency Operations Development Committee. Currently, I don't know if we need to go through these, but we'll just go down. Right now, Mike Walker is the director of the Nevada Association of School Board. I guess we could say, anybody else is interested in that position? If so, please come forward.
I would like Mike to remain as the director on the Nevada Association of School Boards. He's also been appointed through the Nevada Association of School Boards as a board member representative on the State Board of Education, and he is providing valuable input for all Nevada schools, school boards, and our school board on that. So I think that would make sense to have him remain in that position.
Any other nominations or interest? Okay, we'll put Mike down. Do we make one motion for all these?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The alternate director now is myself. I would be glad to remain in that position unless somebody else would like to do that. Okay, seeing nothing, I'll remain in that position. A member of the Carson City Parks and Rec Committee. Right now, that is
Me?
Stacy.
Yep. I'd like to stay unless somebody has a strong interest in it.
Anybody else interested in that position? Okay, and then we'll put Stacy down for that again. Thank you. On the Debt Management Commission, I'm currently serving that position, and I would be glad to continue unless somebody else would like to do that.
Hey, Richard, just a comment as we go down the list because we're near the bottom, but as president, you'll typically serve on the Carson City Schools Foundation Committee.
Okay.
And then, not that it takes a lot of involvement, but you'll also meet as a representative on the Emergency Operations Development Committee. Although, Mr. Stokes, is that a requirement that the president do that, or does it matter?
No, we just
Okay.
need to have a board member serving on
Okay.
that committee.
I just wanted to make sure you didn't accidentally overcommit yourself.
Okay. Seeing no other interest, I'll continue. The Debt Management Commission only meets, I think, once a quarter, so it's not a whole lot. Partnership, Carson City. Right now, Lupe Ramirez is serving on that committee.
I'm interested in staying on the committee.
Anybody else interested in that position? Seeing none, we'll put Lupe down for that. Legislative Liaison is the next one. And right now, that is Joe Cassiopo and Laurel Crossman. You're okay?
Yeah, I'd like to stay involved.
Okay. Any other interest in that position? Then we'll put down, leave Laurel and Joe. The School Naming Committee. Right now, that is Mike Walker and Stacy Wilkie McCulloch. You guys interested in that position?
And for the record, we did have to work.
Yeah, there's a lot of work involved in that, I know.
The first time in its history, we had some involvement, huh?
No, twice.
No, I know.
Twice. We did Andreessen and we did Quilling, so
Okay, good.
let's see. Got to get one more in because we're in our final lap here.
Okay, so Mike Walker and Stacy. The Superintendent's Joint Advisory Committee, I believe that is now Dawn, right?
Yes, I'd like to remain on that. We're halfway through the year. I think we have 3 or 4 meetings left, and I'd like to stay on there.
Any other interest in that position?
No, I think it's really important that Dawn stays on there because we just got it back running and it'd be hard for somebody to step in.
Okay, I agree. We'll leave Dawn on that. Then the Carson City Schools Foundation. That'd be me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other interest in that position? Okay.
That's by bylaw. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Representative of the Student Attendance Review Board. Right now, that is Laurel Crossman and Lupe Ramirez. You're the alternate, yeah, and Lupe is the primary.
I would
With
like-
interest in that still?
I'm interested in serving on that.
Okay. Any other interest? Okay. And the representative on the Emergency Operations Development Committee, right now that's Joe Cassiopo.
Yeah, and I'm happy to stay on that.
Okay, so we'll leave Joe on there. Any other interest? Okay. Then, guess what we need is a motion now by somebody.
I'll move that the following trustees serve on various committees. So Walker is Director of Nevada Association of School Boards. Varner, alternate Director of Nevada Association of School Boards. Wilkie McCullough, member of the Carson City Parks and Recreation Committee. Varner, member of the Debt Management Committee. Ramirez, member of Partnership Carson City. Trustee Cassiopo and Trustee Crossman, legislative liaisons. Walker and Wilkie McCullough, member of the Superintendent's School Naming Committee. Carini, member of the Superintendent's Joint Advisory Committee. Varner as representative for Carson City Schools Foundation. Ramirez, member of the SARB, with Crossman as the alternate, and Cassiopo as representative for the emergency operations.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Joe Cassiopo. Any other board discussion on the motion? Seeing none, any public comment on this issue? Seeing none, any remote?
No, Mr. Varner.
We'll go ahead and call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposition, say nay. No opposition, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you, guys. Moving on to item number 10, discussion and possible action on the appointment of trustees to serve as individual liaisons to the school within the district. And this is for possible action. Right now, we have Laurel Crossman at the Fritch Elementary School and Fremont Elementary School. Laurel, I don't know if you want to continue on or if there's any other interest.
I'm happy to continue on. This is the first year in a long time that I don't have any students at Fritch Elementary School, and I've kind of been hogging it since I've been on the board. So if there's somebody who's been dying to do it, I could give it up. But if not, I'm happy to stay there because I do have a good relationship with Mr. Brown. And
Any other interest in either of those schools? Seeing none, Laurel, congratulations. Boardwalk Bray Elementary and Carson Middle School. I've been the liaison for those two schools, and there again, I'd be glad to continue unless someone else would like to have one of those schools to be the liaison for this coming year. Seeing nobody raising their hand, I'll stay with those two schools. Carson High School, Right now, it's Stacy Wilkie McCulloch. Stacy, are you still interested? Anybody else interested in being a liaison for
I am
Carson
also
High?
interested in Carson High School if I can be the second.
We could do that, I
person.
think, Stacy and Lupe,
Thank you.
okay? Pioneer High School, Joe, you've been the liaison there. Are you still interested in that?
Yeah, I'm still interested.
Okay. Anybody else interested in Pioneer High? Seeing nothing, nobody, we'll leave Joe on that. Empire Elementary and El Seeliger Elementary School, Lupe Ramirez has been on those. Anybody else interested in those? Number one, I should ask you, Lupe, if you're still interested in those two schools.
If I'm picking up Carson High, if I may, I will give up one of the elementary schools, Empire.
You'd give up Empire?
If someone else can pick up Empire.
Okay. Anybody else interested in being the liaison for Empire?
I can do Empire.
Stacy?
Unless Dawn wants to do it. I don't think Dawn
Okay.
has a school yet.
Then we'll make Stacy.
You have Eagle Valley.
Anybody else interested in any of those two schools? Seeing none, then Lupe will continue with El Seeliger, and then Stacy with the Empire Elementary School. Carson High School and Eagle Valley Middle School, Dawn Creaney.
I could stay with Eagle Valley. I think we already have two now for Carson High.
Okay. Any other interest in either one of those two schools? Seeing none. And we have Mark Twain Elementary School, the Brady Building. I know I'm going to butcher this name, Avisteri Early Childhood Center. That's been Mike Walker.
And I'm happy to keep working with those schools.
Any other interest in either of those schools? Seeing none, we'll leave Mike Walker on there. And then what we'll do is call for a motion, and we'll do, somebody want to make a motion?
I can do this one. I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees approve the following appointment of trustees to serve as individual liaisons to the following schools. Laurel to Fritch Elementary School, Richard to Borderwick Bray, Laurel to Fremont, Mike to Mark Twain, Stacy to Empire, Lupe to El Seeliger, Richard to Carson Middle, Dawn to Eagle Valley, Stacy and Lupe to Carson High School, Joe to Pioneer High School, and Mike to the Bray Building Avisteri Early Childhood Center.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Lupe. Any board discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Any public comment on this motion? Seeing none. Any remote?
No, Mr. Varner.
Seeing none, we'll go ahead and call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, guys. Moving on now to item number 11, association reports. Do we have any association reports tonight? None in the public section here. Any remote public comment or association report?
No, Mr. Varner.
Okay, no reports tonight. Now we'll move on to the public comment section. Comments will be accepted in person or through virtual participation via email at publiccomment@carson.k12.nv.us. Comments may be made by members of the public on any matter within the authority of this board. Please note that public comment will be taken on items marked for possible action before action is taken on such items. And members of the public are encouraged to comment on such items at the time they are being considered. Although members of the board may respond to questions and discuss issues raised during public comment, no action may be taken on such a matter until the matter is placed on an agenda for action at the meeting. In making public comment, speakers are asked to keep their comments to 3 minutes, limit their comments to 3 minutes. sign in and then come up to the table and speak into the microphone and identify yourselves for the record. And there again, you have 3 minutes for the comments. Do we have any public comments at this time? I see Betsy in the back there.
Betsy Strasberg. I'd like to congratulate the trustees on their new positions for this upcoming year and look forward to when the name tags or signage is changed so it is visible to the people who are not here. This has been a challenging year, and I know some of you are tired of seeing the usual faces over here, and we spend about the same amount of time in reviewing the agenda, doing the research, and our hope is to bring to you additional research that you may not have time between the Friday and the Tuesday. That is our purpose, and that's what we want to bring to you. There is a lot of parents who are not here, and the reason they are not here is because they have great confidence in your abilities to conduct the affairs of the school district in the most effective way and to the best interest of your constituents. So I'd like to again congratulate you on your new challenges for this year and welcome aboard. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I have some sign-in sheets here, and the next one I have in front of me is Heather. Yeah, we could, yeah. And just so everybody knows, we can go ahead and take public comment on item number 13 also. So if somebody wants to talk about that later, or if that's what you come and talk about now, okay.
Heather Coe, and I did want to ask what is going to be happening with the mass and testing, and what you plan on doing as far as having vaccination sites for around kids, which I'm not for, by the way, and they're dangerous. They are not for children. That's an absolute fact. That comes from Dr. Robert Malone, who came up with the mRNA technology for the vaccine. It was never meant for children. My children will not be vaccinated. I don't want any child to have the opportunity to have something close by that they could do so without their parents' knowledge, for starters. I know that you guys have been doing a lot of testing, which is the only reason why kids are out of school. It's not because they have symptoms and are sick. And I find that to be a problem too. This latest variant is nothing but a cold. And I don't understand why people are going to extremes over this. And I do not want the masks anymore. And I've already given my child, I left it up to him whether or not he wants to go somewhere else for school to finish out his last year, because he's tired of this. These masks are so difficult for these kids, especially the young ones. It's not healthy. You are taking away their childhood. And there is a 50% increase in suicide and depression with young kids. So that people need to acknowledge that. I mean, people need to talk to these kids. They're the ones going through this. So I am begging you guys to please drop these masks and stop the massive testing. Because unless a child's sick, they should not be home. This is the only way we're going to have herd immunity and get over this. And it's been politicized, and I am tired of it. And my child's tired of it. That's why I gave him the option whether or not to come back. So that's all I have to say. And congratulations to all of you.
Thank you, Joey. Thank you. Next, Jesse Tingle.
So, Mr. President, while the next person comes up, just so the public is clear, by agreeing to take public comment on item 13, any public comment related to the reopening plan should be saved for that item.
All right, thank you. Does everybody understand that? So what he's saying is that any public comment that's related to item number 13, which is the discussion of the reopening plan, to please save your comment for that and not in the open public comment section right now, because we are going to open it up for discussion on the reopening plan.
And that'll be concerning masks.
Yeah. I think that would probably concern the masks, right?
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, yeah. Under the next one. Jason, you may be the same, then you may want to save your comments.
Yeah, he's feeling under the weather, so I'm gonna try to.
Oh, okay, sorry to hear that. Joey? That's my understanding.
So the general public comment is for any item that is not on the agenda for public comment. What the president has done in this situation, although item number 13 is a discussion item, he's agreed to allow public comment specifically on that item. So if you have public comment on any matter within the subject matter or jurisdiction of the board, not on the agenda for public comment, now's the time to make it. If you want to make public comment on the reopening plan specifically, there will be time for that on item 13.
Thank you for that clarification. Joey?
Good evening, everyone.
You
Happy
state your
New
name,
Year.
please.
Oh, Joy Trushinsky. I spent Christmas and the New Year holiday, or New Year's holiday in Florida. Florida is a free state, free from masks and COVID-19 vaccine mandates. There was no lockdown in Florida. Businesses and schools were open in 2019, 2020, 21, and are open now. The economy flourishes, and hospitals never overflowed with COVID-19 cases. Why? Because the Governor DeSantis administration, they were proactive and provided therapeutics like monoclonal antibody treatment to small private clinics all across Florida to treat COVID patients. While Florida citizens did come down with COVID, they could get treatment. Also, many doctors prescribed ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and other therapeutics. On September 3rd, 2021, according to The Blaze and other news media outlets, the CDC endorsed use of ivermectin for Afghan refugees in the treatment of COVID-19. At the same time, ran a smear campaign against its use for Americans. Today, the CDC admits over 75% of COVID deaths were people who had at least 4 comorbidities. The people were unwell to begin with. We are talking about people with cancer, heart disease, they were obese, they had diabetes, emphysema, and many other problems. But these people were not given proper treatment, and I'm talking across the country. The fear-mongering surrounding COVID was used to justify lockdowns, mask and jab mandates, with the spreading of the lie that COVID was killing huge numbers of healthy people, which was not the case. Therapeutics were not pushed by our government, only the COVID-19 jabs. The variants are far less dangerous, and the therapeutics used to treat COVID-19 can also be used for the variants. The truth is the pandemic is over. Only Nevada and 4 other states have mask mandates and jabs.
Thank you, Joey. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other public comment at this time? Please come up and state your name, please, for the record.
Good evening. My name is Kathleen Sanchez, and I am a mom to a Carson High School athlete. So my point of contention real quick is Lupe and Stacy, you will now be reporting for Carson High School. Thank you. So I'd like to hear back on the fights that we're having every single day, every day. And it's a concern, not only to my son, but his friends. And I'm being told that we have enough people at the school to handle it. I don't know if that's true, but I would like to hear about that. Mr. Walker, I adore you. I always have. I think you're wonderful. You were my kid's teacher. 2 meetings. We need 2 meetings because I can't even get an answer at what we have now. We come here, everybody says things, everybody has their points. We haven't heard back. We don't have a goal. We have nothing in mind. Mr. Stokes, I appreciate you. When the season started out, you said no masks. I rejoice. I emailed you right away and I thanked you. And 2 weeks later, you put masks on our kids. And again, I emailed you. I thanked you for being on top of it, but I was entrusting the fact that you said we were going to be done with this in October. Why aren't we done with this? You'll be leaving the school district before we ever see masks off our kids, and I don't appreciate that. But I do appreciate you. I'm sure that you're doing the best that you can, but we need some answers because this is getting to be frustrating. You started off with Clark and Washoe reporting on their numbers. We're not Clark and we're not Washoe. We're a completely different beast here in Carson City, and I would expect that we'd be treated as such. So since we get to speak on 13, I'll wait for that also. Thank you.
Thank you. I see that, I think Miles. Thank you.
Miles Humphreys for the record. I agree with what she just said completely. The masks are a total distraction. This board has continually heard parents, heard doctors, heard actually people in the science division, and it's just right there, over the head and through one ear and out the other. And like I've said before, it's total political theater. I don't know if it's because you guys want a bigger attaboy from Sisolak, but there is absolutely 0.0 law concerning a mandate. The mandate has about as much legal weight as if you guys said 2 men need to get together and date, and that's a mandate. You could even ask Law Dog over there.
Mr. President, I don't mean to interrupt Mr. Miles, and I'll stop his time, but I think we've indicated that the masks and the issues with the reopening are going to be discussed in item 13. If you have other stuff, Mr. Humphrey, that's fine, but if it's all related to the masks, then.
Okay, well, this is part of the reopening, but
Yeah,
this is my own personal opinion on masks and also with everything going on.
Right, and you're absolutely entitled to your opinion, but if it's on item 13, we'd like you to wait until item 13 to discuss it.
I didn't touch on item 13. There's more stuff that I want to bring up on item 13, but the mask is something that is important, especially for our kids.
I think we'll be discussing the masks in item number 13. I think that's what he's pointing out.
Okay, well, now that you cut me off and I lost a little train of thought, let's go ahead and start it over. And that is fair.
Keep going.
Oh, so we're gonna take away my time under the open meeting law, which you're very familiar with. But
Mr. President,
I appreciate
the point is that if we have public comment on one item specifically, we're not giving everybody 2 bites at that apple. And so if we have comment, very respectfully, related to the items that are going to be discussed in item 13, all we're asking is that you wait until that item to discuss them. This is for everything else in the board's
Where does it
jurisdiction.
say on this, on item 13, that it's mask specific?
It says the reopening plan, which includes specifically
It says the reopening
imposition
plan,
of masks.
exactly. I know the open meeting law very well, and I'd appreciate my time back.
That's fine, but on some other issue then, okay? Let's save the comments about the reopening plan, the masks, and everything, until item 13. We're allowing everybody to have public comment on item number 13, which is for discussion only. which we normally don't do, but we understand it's an important item for people to discuss. So that's why we're allowing public comment
Well,
there.
my opinion that was pertaining to mask, that would have dovetailed into the children and everything else, was cut off by Mr. Ryan Russell, which I do not appreciate, and that's not part of the open meeting law. So,
What do you want to discuss now, I guess, is the biggest thing.
well, now that it's been a distraction, let's just go on from there. So we could either do one of two things. So,
I'm just checking because I'm running the timer. Mr. President, do you want me to give 3 minutes and he'll speak on any other item?
Yeah, let's do that because we don't really know how much time that he had
Or-
spent ready.
or
For
now
the
that my
record's
train of-
clear, there
now
will
that-
be 3 minutes given on item 13 as well.
Okay,
when
now
that
that my
time
train of
comes.
thought is now that I need to take a pause and I'll collect my thoughts, and I would suggest that you would give me an extra amount of time on item 13 to discuss, and therefore bring in my thoughts since I was so rudely disrupted.
We would give you 3 minutes like we do everybody else on item number 13.
It's up to your discretion. You can go over 3 minutes.
No,
And I
we
think that
are
it'd be
going
only
to-
fair that you could give me more minutes since it was disrupted.
We'll stick with the 3 minutes.
All right.
It's the only fair thing to do for everybody.
All right, there will be a complaint.
All right. Any other public comment? Not related to item number 13?
Hello, Karen Stevens for the record. Congratulations, Board President-elect
Thank you.
and other members. Good evening. I hope you had a wonderful holiday. Tonight, I would like to provide the following information provided by Alex Mayer, Board President of Children's Health Defense in the California chapter. She says the reason our children are being targeted by COVID-19 mandates is because vaccine makers want to get the shots onto the childhood vaccination schedule. Once the vaccine is added to the childhood schedule, the vaccine maker is shielded from financial liability for injuries. According to a federal court decision, the Pfizer shot and BioNTech's Comirnaty are not interchangeable. Comirnaty is not fully approved or licensed. It's only ready for approval. Comirnaty is licensed to be manufactured, introduced into state commerce, and marketed, but it is not licensed to be given to anyone in the United States. They are waiting for it to be added to the childhood vaccination schedule to get a liability shield from injuries to children and adults. Once a product is fully licensed, the company becomes liable for injuries. At that point, the product can be legally mandated. Knowing how dangerous the COVID-19 shots are, no manufacturer wants to be financially liable for injuries. They'd be sued out of business. To get immunity from liability again, the vax manufacturers need to get their product under the childhood vaccination schedule. This allows the government to mandate the shots. Young people are dying from the shots that have a 99.9973% chance of recovering from COVID. Every medical intervention is a risk-benefit equation, and it doesn't calculate for kids to be vaccinated. According to Dr. Robert Malone, children should never be getting a COVID shot. They don't prevent transmission, they don't prevent cases, they don't prevent hospitalizations or death. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Any other public comment at this time? Please state your name for the record. Thank you.
It's left on, sorry. Excuse me. Shanna Cobb Adams for the record. I just wanted to add on to, I cannot remember her name, but wanted to see if we can start getting some reports on the violence in the schools. I have had one son graduate from Carson High, another one just transferred to Pioneer so that he can do all online because he is fed up with what he's seeing at the high school. And my youngest is a freshman at the high school. I have personally seen videos that she has had, I don't know, with all their social media apps, gone viral with a girl that had been suspended and was out a week later, and the video is of her kicking a girl in the face as she's sitting up against the wall. I mean, some of these videos are absolutely horrendous. I told my daughter high school was so much fun, it was amazing, and she is struggling big time with the increase in the violence, and I really have not heard a lot on what the plans are to try and, you know, hold these kids accountable, hold the parents accountable for the behavior of their children. I want my daughter to have a good, positive high school experience. If she was younger, I probably would be homeschooling her at this point. It's gotten really out of hand. I know you guys are doing the best that you can, but if we can have, and I'm sorry, I'm a little bit nervous. If we can have like some ongoing reports on what is going on. I don't even know what's going on at the middle school. I don't have children at that younger age. I just know that she is coming home every day. She's getting threatened, and her view and her friends' views, and most kids really, is that, well, they'll get a slap on the hand for a few days and they're back to doing the same stuff again over and over and over. And it's really creating such a horrendous environment. These kids are supposed to be learning. They're supposed to be preparing for the real world. And on top of everything they're dealing with COVID and all of the mental health issues and depression and things, it's something that I would really like to see this board take an active stance on and have some ongoing reports on. So I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Mr. President, if I could just ask a quick question for Ms. Sanchez and also our last speaker. Have you talked to the principal at the school? Have you talked to the administrators at Carson High School about this?
When I called Carson High, I started off my conversation.
Does she need to be up on the microphone?
Yes. Kathleen Sanchez. When I called Carson High to ask them, I said I'm a concerned parent. I told them who my son was. I said he hasn't been involved, but he's witnessed this. His friends have. What's the plan? And she said, well, I don't know what you mean. And I said, do you have metal detectors in the school? Are you protecting my child? Why would we have metal detectors? I said, this is an honest to goodness threat that when you have these kids that are going hand to hand, at some point somebody's going to carry a gun in, and it is going to be bad news. And she says, well, I can let you talk to a school counselor. I said, I'm not the student. I'm not the one with the problem, and I'm not coming in with a handgun. So I don't want to talk to a counselor. I want to know what the problem is that's causing this and how we're going to resolve this. She says, well, we have community resource officers on the scene. And I said, but they're not stopping the fights. She says, well, I guess you could just talk to a counselor. I said, okay. So that's why I come here, is because I'm hoping I can get some answers.
And just to add on to that, no, I have not contacted the principal directly. I certainly can, but I think that based on what I'm hearing, not just from my daughter, but from other younger, high school students as well, I think this has gone above and beyond what the principal can handle on their own. I think that it is going to take a community effort, and I would imagine that these similar issues are happening at the junior high. She attended CMS prior to going to the high school, and the violence there was just as bad. So as much as I would love to trust that the principal has the resources to handle it, I think it's a more widespread issue at this point.
Mr. President?
Go ahead.
Just, and you'll have time to talk again, I apologize. But I had this in my notes of things I was going to ask the superintendent for a future agenda item, to have a report on, an update on the school violence, and to add to that, what is being done so that we can have a prepared report back to the public, because I think that's an important concern. And we want our schools to be safe. We have sat in as a board on disciplinary hearings this year. And I know other items have been done, but I think a report, so you can, maybe get some statistics and some information on, what the plan is going forward would be important. So I don't want you to think that's going undiscussed. That's a concern that I've heard numerous times.
And the CMS violence precludes itself. My kids didn't go to CMS, but I've heard of it. So have we carried that forward into the high school? I mean, it's troubling. And when you hear of other high schools, and then we also had the TikTok viral thing, we had our schools shut down. So we have some true concerns as parents that this isn't just talk, it just becomes action after a while. And I don't know what happened with the PTA meetings, but we were notified last night that there were going to be no PTA meetings in person. So I don't know if that's due to violence. I don't know if that's due to a threat. But we're no longer going to have PTA meetings, and I was gearing up to visit another one because our principal has just started at Carson High. He seems like a very decent man, but now we're no longer invited in person. So I don't know if this is more serious than parents are aware of, but I appreciate the fact that you'll look into it. Somebody will look into it.
Any other public comment this time? Yes, you can. Thank you, Miles.
So again, Miles, and touching on what the lady said about the violence, one of the things that does happen to come into play is the mask with violence, because facial recognition is, and just the mouth interpretation is huge. It's absolutely huge. And so if there's a lot of frustration on behalf of the teachers that are taking it out on the students, a lot of the students who can't understand other students, that creates a big conflict throughout the whole school district. So yes, the mask in some sort of way play a huge part in that. And it's another distraction, like I've mentioned before. And so the violence does have to stop. I totally agree with them. And one thing outside of the violence is it was real easy for us to do what we did, taking the kids out of school. And it was also Carson City's was also the last school district to put the kids in school 5 days a week. So we're kind of behind the curve. But I think now would be a good time for Carson City School District to actually jump out and be one of the first districts to do what's right as far as removing the mask and eliminating some of the problems that are happening. And it's not going to be easy by any means, but there has to be somebody who's going to start the momentum forward. We can't always be the last district to do everything, but we can at some point take that first step forward and show an utmost leadership and take on the tough task with the media, with the papers, and with the sheep dip propaganda believing parents. And so we're going to have to go out there, and I think if you guys lead the stance in doing what's right for the children and for the parents, I think you guys are going to actually see a big attaboy from this community. And it's not going to be easy by any stretch, and it's actually going to be super hard. But I think if you guys look in the mirror at the end of the day and you say, do we really believe in this nonsense? And if you truly do, then go ahead and vote and say, hey, I'm going to go ahead and continue with the political theater. But if you don't, be the ones to be the first people to get out ahead of this and make a positive impact for our community. Thanks.
Thank you, Miles. Any other public comment in person? Public comment? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close in-person public comment at this time. Any online comment?
Yes, Mr. Varner, thank you. This comment is from Lexi Harris, a sophomore taking honors and college classes through WNC at Carson High. For my last semester of high school, I've been required to wear a mask for 7 to 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. I'm reaching a point of subsidence with the policies. Who is anyone not licensed in the medical field to enforce a rule regarding my health? Where is my say in my own body? And the only alternative option is to do completely online school once more. I need a choice. I have a friend at a different school where masks are optional and free choice is advocated for. No one there has been sent home or been sick and missed out on in-person school time. The same can be said about other schools in our district. So why do we force coverings onto the kids at Carson High? The side effects are worse than the solution. Fatigue, dizziness, confusion, sleepiness, drawn-out cough, respiratory infections caused by masks are very real. I had gotten a common cold and wearing a mask for up to 8 hours dragged out the symptoms, and I ended up getting a respiratory infection for about 2 weeks. It happened twice, and it makes me ever more reluctant to be forced to wear a mask. Health should be looking at the data and coming to your own plan of action accommodated for yourself, not complying to rules out of fear or threat. Why do I have a teacher that has attached mask wearing properly as a subjective part of my grade? I shouldn't have to wear the criticism of others on how I'm taking care of myself. The whole situation feels animalistic. I recall my principal saying something along the lines, whether you believe they work or not, we're going to keep wearing masks. Where is the science? I haven't seen an ounce of it in the reasoning behind the policies we follow. I feel blatantly controlled by a force who can provide no legitimate reasoning. There needs to be a choice. The solution that's been imposed upon me is worse than the problem itself. If someone has looked at the science and decides wearing a mask is the best choice for them, that's okay. If someone chooses wearing a mask is not in their best interest, then they should be allowed to not wear a mask. It's simple logic, and to say I have in how I take care of myself has been taken away for the last 16 months. As of January 11th, absences due to COVID cases are spiking at Carson High. So what was the point of being so strict about masks? They clearly aren't helping keep kids in school, which is what the school board should be advocating for, should it not? The masks certainly don't make me want to be in school. The threat of quarantine and online school looming over us as a consequence of improper masking is completely out of my control, yet causes severe anxiety for me and all students who enjoy being in person for school, while my previously mentioned friend has none of these anxieties. How do we go to school in the same county, yet share little worry over masks and quarantine?
3 minutes, thank you.
Mr. Varner, I'll include the last remaining in the minutes.
Yes, thank you. Any other remote comments?
I have one other comment, and this is from Barb Mathers. Within the comment, Mr. Varner, she submitted a picture that was found in the paper recently with the article titled, Carson High Counselor, School Board Honored with NASB Awards. In the picture is Joe Cassiopo, Laurel Crossman, Carson High Principal, and Carson High Counselor, and Superintendent Stokes. No one is in masks, and there is no social distancing. Apparently, COVID doesn't spread during photo ops. This must fit under the do as I say, not as I do rule. I would like to know why NASB is handing out awards, and when we have a record number of suicides and fights, and depression is high among our students. As parents, we ask that the board come up with the real solutions for how to help our students to lower these statistics. Also, I recently spoke to a friend whose son is in kindergarten at Fremont. I asked him how he is enjoying school, and his response was, I hate school. My friend said that they have to do a lot of screen time, and he really is hating school. To be hating school in kindergarten is a failure on every possible level. She said in music, they don't sing much, they are on screens. In library, as opposed to reading as a class, they often use screen time. This was the case when my son attended Fremont for first and second grade too. A lot of my questions for how was school were answered with, I was on the computer, which was one of many reasons our family decided to homeschool and have been for the last 2 school years. Take the screens away, especially in classes like music and library, and put books and instruments in our kids' hands. And for anyone who works at Fremont and is at the school board meeting or watching live, you need to talk to the parents of your kindergarten students to see how you can help them love learning. I was so sad when he told me he hates school, and you should too. Having students on the beginning of their learning path hating school needs to be fixed. Sincerely, Barb Mathers. And Mr. Varner, that's all I have remote.
Okay, we'll close remote comment then. I'd like to thank everybody for their comments tonight, and we're going to go ahead and move on to item number 13 now. discussion and 6-month review of the Carson City School District Safe School Reopening Plan and Path Forward for Distant Education for the 2021-2022 school year. And this is for discussion only. However, as stated earlier, we are going to allow public comment. And Mr. Stokes and Mrs. Valerie Dockery will be giving this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. It's been said several times here tonight that this has been an unusual time in education. I couldn't agree more. As you recall, the pandemic has resulted in a variety of events in our school district, including a hybrid year, which greatly impacted how we do business. The federal government, shortly after that, made funding opportunities available for schools across the United States. And each individual state had the opportunity to advise the school districts under its purview in helping to receive some of the federal funding that was being made at the time. At the beginning of the summer, school districts were given instructions for applying for federal monies referred to as the Elementary and Secondary Emergency Relief Fund, or ESSER. Large amounts of money were being made available to try and deal with some of the events associated with the pandemic. We learned from the federal government and from the state Department of Education that there was a requirement to begin the process, and that was to create a plan that would deal with in-person instruction and also distance ed instruction. We didn't have a lot to go on. We had some bullet points that were made available to us to help construct this plan. That information, there was some additional detail provided to us which said that we would receive some additional support from the State Department of Education. And we also knew that these plans were to be reviewed periodically, and the period of time that they gave was approximately 6 months. And so, as you recall, we came forward with a plan, and that plan was presented to the board, to the community at the start of the summer. And that plan has since been reviewed by the Department of Education here in Nevada, and they provided some feedback. They asked us to take a look at some of our actions and expand in writing what those processes would be. And I would like for my colleague Valerie Dockery, who helped take those suggestions from the Department of Education and has helped to incorporate that information into our plan. I'd like her to go through what those are at this time. I have a feeling that there'll be some discussion that we'll both make an attempt to answer. And we've also got other staff members here that have responsibilities within the school district that also might be able to add some additional information. So with that, Mr. President, I'd like to turn the microphone over to Mrs. Dockery, and we'll proceed further.
Thank you. Valerie, go ahead.
Thank you, Valerie Dockery, Director of Grants and Special Projects for the Carson City School District. As Mr. Stokes indicated, in late November, we received feedback from the Department of Education on our reopening plan that, keep in mind, we submitted back in July. So we did not receive this feedback, and which was included in your packet, until the end of November. So when we received this feedback, we went through it and we looked at and we spoke with representatives at the Department of Ed about specifically, what we needed to add to our plan to meet the guidelines of this federal funding. So although I did not write the original plan, I went back through and I added the items from a compliance standpoint. So what I added in here was just the items that the Department of Education asked for in order to be in compliance with the law. And you can see in the draft that those items are indicated in red. And so I'll just go through those with you now. The first item is actually on page 3. And as you can see, we made no changes to any of the items. Nothing, and I have to say, nothing was deleted, right? It was only added. So under this section, we added the item number D. So we did not change any of the other items 1 through 5 whatsoever. We were asked under number 5A to add a guidance, CDC guidance. The Department of Ed has asked us to do that. We just added that link right there. And then we added number D. The district provides information to parents and families regarding vaccine opportunities in the community. We provide information on clinics. Again, we do not have any clinics in the schools, but we provide information about clinics that are available within the community, also through the school-based health center. But we do not have those on site. And we do provide all of that information, and it's sent out to parents via local media, the school, the website, and Parent Square, and that we also monitor the vaccine rates through WebIC. Yes.
Is this just for the COVID-19 vaccine, or is it for all childhood vaccines?
No, this is strictly with COVID-19.
Okay.
Has nothing to do with any other vaccines. And then we added that one sentence to the start of number E. Once mask mandates are lifted, blah blah blah. So that part is the part we added. Going on to page 4. Reducing the likelihood of an outbreak. Again, the Department of Education asked us to add information here that we would provide on how we would reduce the likelihood of an outbreak. And in working with our risk manager and with the guidance that we received, we're highlighting here that we are adhering to the guidance from the Nevada Division of Health and Human Services, and that we are testing our athletes when they travel out of county. We've procured rapid tests. We have Health Services Office equipped to provide testing for students and staff that are symptomatic, and that we have contracted with a third party to support these efforts. So again, those are just mitigation efforts that we were asked to add to our plan because the Department of Ed did not feel that we had enough detail in our plan. The Department of Education also felt that we had not spelled out specifically how we were supporting students with special needs. Although we were doing these things, we didn't have them written in the plan. So in working with Dr. Lennox, the Director of Student Support Services, she gave me this information here on working with our students, special population, which we have been doing since the beginning, but we outlined them here in this document. And then continuing on, I believe we're on page 7. I was asked to specifically call out social distancing. In a second round of feedback, I sent this draft to the Department of Ed last week, and they approved everything we had put in here, but then they asked me to add this piece on social distancing. So we added that piece in as well.
Valerie, if we could go back, I'm sorry,
Yes.
to page number 5.
Yes.
And the waivers are in place for staff to support transportation, classrooms, lunch programming, and restrooms. What kind of waivers are we talking about there?
I think we're just talking about, for example, on a bus where we have a special education paraprofessional working on a bus. we're not maintaining 6 feet of social distancing if they're working with a student on the bus. Those kinds of, and it's not an actual written waiver, I believe. It's just a waiver of that policy to maintain social distancing.
So we have a special needs student that needs additional help.
Right,
Okay.
exactly.
Close contact.
In the classroom or in the lunchroom, if they're sitting with a child at lunchtime, accompanying that child to the restroom, helping that child with toileting, all those kinds of things.
Something that you have
We
to have
cannot
contact with the
maintain
student.
6 feet of social distancing.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
yes. And again, I added that social distancing piece on page 7. And then on page 8, I was asked to add components regarding wellness of students. They really liked our at-home health assessment. They just wanted me to add a link to it. And then also on our protocols that are available on our website to add a link there. Again, this was here before, just adding a link to those protocols. And then, let's see, this entire section on social emotional health of students, we added that as well. That starts at the bottom of page 8. I only put the headings in red, but we added all of this in addressing how we support students. Again, these are things we were doing, but we didn't have them written in the plan. And so we had to go back and add them to the plan. Our school-wide supports with our social workers, with a safe environment, our home student connections, and various learning, adopting our instruction to various learning modalities. These are all things we've been doing, but we just needed to put them, but prior even to COVID, we've been doing these things, but we put them into the plan. Progress monitoring, again, is something we've always been doing. We've put learning loss plans in place, and I believe you're going to hear more about the specifics of those plans at a future meeting. Collecting data, as we always have, to support that. They wanted to see this in the plan. And our tiers of interventions that we provide under the MTSS model that we are adopting. So those things are initiatives we've been working on, but they weren't specifically spelled out in the plan, and we were asked to add them. And then moving on, we were also asked on page 10 to outline how we're supporting staff during this time and working with Dr. Delphin. We added this section here, recognizing the need to support staff during the pandemic. We have we've provided information to employees. We've had training with our supervisors on working with staff that are stressed, that are experiencing stress, and we are also providing resources through our employee assistance program. So again, these are all things that Dr. Delphin has put in place, working with Ann Sear, our risk manager. We just added those into the plan because they were not spelled out specifically. And we were also asked to add a timeline here, and you can see the timeline on page 11. This plan as 6 months, so we will review it in the summer in preparation for the next school year. And again, we're bringing this to you as an informational item. The plan will be resubmitted to the Department of Education by the end of this week. That is the deadline that we have to resubmit it, and it is not required for this plan to be approved by the board. The input is obviously taken, but it doesn't have to be formally approved by the board.
Sure, go ahead, Joe.
Valerie, thank you. I had a chance to speak to you, just for transparency about this. And my understanding, and as I read through it again, is they requested us to provide additional information. We didn't change, as I interpret it, we didn't change the content of the plan. If you didn't like the plan before about masks, you're still not going to like it now. If you liked it before, you're going to like it now. But it's just information. It didn't really change the substance of the plan, the best I could tell. And then I checked the links that were attached to this, and one of the links just references Governor's Directive 48. So again, it's not a new link or a new site. It just sent you to what's been in place for a while. And I know we have concerns about masks and all that, and we'll hear about that, and we'll continue to work with Mr. Stokes about, how we continue forward and maybe get to a normal point again. But I just wanted to make clear or ask if my understanding is correct, that we didn't change the content of this. We just provided maybe some additional information.
Correct. We did not remove anything from the plan. We only added the pieces. They liked our basic plan. They thought it was appropriate. They just wanted some more detail in certain areas. They did not rate anything related to, mask wearing or anything like that in their comments to us. Just their perspective is, are you keeping schools safe? And is this plan outlining how you're keeping schools safe? And making sure that we're in compliance with the federal law and having such a plan in place.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions by the board for Mrs. Stokes or Mrs. Valerie Dockery? None at all? Mr.
Mr.
Stokes,
President,
go ahead.
maybe before we give up our seats here for members of the community, one of the key pieces to us having school this year is being able to have adults in key positions. As you know, we started the school year not fully staffed in a variety of locations. All of our staff members are required to wear masks per mandate by Governor Sisolak. We did ask students to wear masks after school had started. Part of our operational protocol required that students who were in close contact to anyone who was found or exposed to COVID-19, if students weren't wearing a mask, we were required to send large numbers of students home. We were trying to keep schools open. Our goal in this whole activity is to try to make sure that we have staff in front of students, that students can come to school, that we're not sending them home on computers to do remote work. That was not our intent. I had said initially when the masks were added for our students that when we were able to see the transmission rate in our county go to the low measurement, we could take those masks off. Now, obviously, you can direct me however you'd like with regard to the face masks, and I know we've heard our friends who are very passionate about following a different path with regard to these face masks. Students who are ill and who come to school, and you'll find that most of the kids are ill when they start exhibiting symptoms when they come to our schools, and so they're coming to school sick. They're going to share that with their classmates. They're going to share that with their teachers. It's just part of human activity. That's just kind of how our bodies work. And so, do face masks work? Is it another way to try and to maintain some sort of level of wellness and health in our schools? We're trying everything. And it's what it is, and we certainly are willing to do your bidding. But I can also tell you that we've been asked, and you saw language in this plan that suggests that we follow the guidance of the CDC and our state and local health authorities. We're trying to do that. It's probably not perfect. And I also know better than probably most that as we have school and as these things change from day to day, I mean, everybody's confused about how it's working out and what's going on. It would be wonderful if we had a reset of some sort. I can tell you that my peers, superintendents around the state, are meeting with the governor's office on Friday to again talk about wellness and health in the community and in our individual school districts. I don't know what that meeting will end with, or what if there will be any changes or modifications to what we're currently doing, at least from a state level. But I can tell you that our numbers are high right now. We're worried about having enough adults to hold school. We're not helping our kids' social and emotional wellness when we don't have school. And I guess I'll leave it at that and answer any questions you might have, and then be happy to turn over the microphones to community members for input.
Once again, after hearing Mrs. Stokes, any other discussion, questions from the board? Mike?
So, Mr. Stokes, I think one of the things we probably want to look at is, obviously I'm a principal of a school where masks are optional. And so if we do a comparison, what do exclusions look like in Carson versus Lyon County? You know what I mean? Is it making that big of a difference here if we did go optional? It's 50-50. Half the kids are wearing masks. All the adults have to wear masks. But I think maybe you could, in your weekly meetings with the other superintendents, compare some of those numbers and let's see, is it truly cutting down on our exclusions, or is it pretty much the same everywhere? And I'm legitimately asking that. I don't have that data. I'm just wondering for myself, because we have a lot of people frustrated. But then I hear much more from people who are going to be mad if we take away the masks. So I mean, I don't know that there's a majority either way. I think the population is probably right down the middle on this.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. My only response is that it's different in all of the communities. Lyon County is slightly larger in numbers of students that are enrolled, but we're talking about 6 different communities. Whereas in Carson City, and I know that our friends that visit us regularly have said, okay, even if the kids are wearing masks at school, they're not wearing them outside of school. And we have a number of people in our community who travel to Reno and back to work and vice versa, who come to Carson and work and vice versa. So there's a huge opportunity as the community and the state tries to get back on its feet for interaction with other people. And so you can't not interact with people unless you're just a hermit if you're going to be part of the community, the schools, the stores. And our community and our state's kind of all over the map on this thing when it comes to what's the right thing to do. So I guess we need to put our heads together and come up with some way to determine what the community really wants. And then we test that out. We see how things go, whether or not we're able to continue with school or whether or not we don't have enough adults to run our operation.
If I may.
Go ahead, Joe.
To expand on Trustee Walker, Richard, I appreciate that. I do think that's a lot of the frustration, and it's our frustration, your frustration as well, is this hodgepodge of data and different opinions in different communities and whatnot. But since you're going to be meeting with the governor's office on this, I think that's a great question to ask, to see if we can get some. We have to start developing a plan to get back to normal and shed these masks and those kinds of things. And we're looking, at least I'm looking as a trustee, for some data. I can get data online. A lot of folks out here in the audience have done data research, and we're all finding a mixture of information. But for myself, I'm hoping this collective meeting of the superintendents and then your meeting with the governor's office there can be some poignant questions related to where are we at? Why does Douglas feel they're able to have voluntary masks? Why do certain schools in Lyon why are they feeling they're able to do the same? And versus why do we feel we're not ready to make that leap yet? I want to get us to the point where we're not wearing masks anymore. And I know you and everybody else does too. The question is how and when. And maybe, I know we can't force an answer from the governor's office, but I think we need to ask poignant questions and say, what is that data looking like? I know we have high positivity rates, but what we're seeing with COVID is the positivity rates are high, the transmission rates are high, but the severeness seems to be, with this new variant, seems to be a lot lower. So I'm hoping we've turned a corner. I don't know. I'd like to think we are. But I'd like to push the governor's office the best we can to say, get us some data, prove to us that these masks are still helping us the way we intended them to be helping us, or maybe they're not. And see if we can maybe formulate some, we can get some information so we can take that next step forward. I know it's kind of I'm just thinking off the cuff here, but I want some information from somebody, and I'm just frustrated that as a district, we can't get the information we necessarily need to go forward.
Thank you, Joe. Laurel?
Just a comment. I do think the information that we have from our district with our first 2 weeks of school having over 500 students excluded, and then having it drop within a month to under 20 that were excluded. I think our goal as a board, once we reopened, even in the hybrid, was to get as many and keep as many students in class in person as possible. And from what I have heard from most of the parents that I speak to, they want their kids in school. And most of the parents that have reached out to me through other means than here have said, I'm fine with them wearing masks. I just want them to stay in school. I don't want remote learning. Parents that had their students excluded for exposure as close contacts were saying, oh, I'm so glad now that the masks were required of all, because then their students, they had a case in an elementary school and the whole class wasn't excluded. So if there's a change in how they're doing close contact tracing, that maybe changes some of that, and maybe it's different in our community with Nevada, with our local health department on how they want us to do that, just given, our communities and our schools, we have siblings at multiple school sites that can affect that. I have concerns right now. I totally understand when are we getting it? Because even the parents who say they are supportive of it because they want their kids in school are like, we're all tired of them. But I have concerns right now with the high number of sicknesses that are going around and the high number of staff that I've heard, and just friends with kids who have a lot of sick kids right now. And so I would hesitate during this month to make any drastic change to it, just because I want the kids to stay in school. I think that that's more important.
I'd like to say, as a board member and as a person, I'm in favor of making the masks voluntary. However, we got to do it in such a way that we keep the schools open. I think we all know that last year when we did the remote learning, when that was going on, we all realize, at least I do, that was not successful. Some kids succeeded, but a lot of kids did not by the remote learning. So we got to come up with a plan that's where we can keep the schools open. And like I said, I am in favor of unmasking the kids and making it voluntary, but we got to do it safely. Tonight I was told that there was one class, fourth grade class, where 4 kids were excluded from school for a close contact. It was at lunchtime when they didn't have a mask on. And I was told that if the whole class did not have masks, that whole class may have had to be shut down. So I think that's an issue that as a district and as a community, we have to work together to try to come up with the best solution for our kids in our school.
I think to that point, sorry, Stacy, were you going to say something? Oh, to that point, I agree. First and foremost, we have to keep kids in school. I want that too. I think that's important. And where I'm going with that is this newer information. I just want to probe the question or have it probed. You know, with this new variant, which seems to be taking over everything. Yeah, we have high cases, but while certain people are still getting seriously sick, as I understand it, the vast majority possibly aren't. And I'm not a scientist, I can't speak to that, but I'd like some information, and I'm wondering if what our state and what the feds are seeing is moving us in the direction I'm hoping we're going towards. That, you know, it looks like now we're getting closer to the end game, and maybe we're not, but I just would like to push them on an answer as to where do they think we are? What data are they looking at? And just, you know, provide us that data. I don't want to do anything that harms the kids. And we're kind of at a, you know, it's a darned if you do, darned if you don't kind of thing, but we need to be asking the questions.
Just, I mean, not only the kids in school, but having had a student athlete who missed a senior season and then feeling for those kids last year that lost all their winter sports, if it's something we can do to keep our basketball season and keep our wrestling seasons for these kids, we're going to be having more spectators attending those games. We want them to attend. If that's something that helps to keep the sports, because if the schools have to close, then sporting events have to cancel. So that's a concern that I have, is I don't want the kids to lose out on those.
Stacy?
My question is actually towards Dawn. Has there been any discussion in the JAC with staff's concerns about masks? He said they hadn't discussed it.
Dawn, go ahead.
No, I don't.
I didn't hear the question, Trustee Wilkie.
Now that we have the joint advisory committee working together, I was just wondering if that had come up during any of the discussions that we've had.
That has not.
Any other board discussion on this matter? Mike, go ahead.
And I'll just say, and I'm not disagreeing with anybody, but the safety, you know what I mean? Nobody's advocating for schools to be open unsafely, but
Right.
The point is, we have the same health department as Douglas, Lyon County, Story County, and those schools have optional masks. And the exclusions aren't, I don't believe they're a lot greater than what Carson has seen. And so that's what I'm saying is, let's look at the data and
Yeah.
figure it out. I'm not saying let's be reckless and endanger people.
And I think we agree with that, and I know that Joe does. I know that you'll have your chance, Jason. Thank you very much. No problem. Mr. Stokes, Mrs. Dockery, you have anything else? I'll call one more time for board discussion. Any other thoughts, ideas? Lupe, you have anything?
Not at this moment. I completely agree with all the comments that have been already indicated.
Okay.
I said I don't have anything else to add.
Yeah, okay. What we'll do then is we'll open it up for public comment. Now, this is kind of out of the ordinary since it has been for discussion only. However, we do recognize this is a very important subject, a lot of interest from the public. So we are going to allow public comment, but we will keep it down to the 3 minutes and to this item on the reopening plan. So like I said, we'll open it for public comment. Who wants to go first? Jason, thank you. State your name for the record, please.
Jason Tingle, father of four. You got to work with me here. I seem to be having an adverse reaction to some new medication, so I apologize. But good thing for you, Ms. Crossman. I'm not sure who you're speaking with, but I've got completely the opposite and other side. Mr. Walker, thank you for looking for reason. That's all I asked for. Let's get the facts. This is one thing right here. This is how to wear your mask. I'm gonna leave all of this with all of you. This is the CDC guidance on how to wear your masks. I guarantee if every single person on this board, Mr. Stokes, went into a school, none of them are following this. This is pointless, and you can tell. You have a 25% chance at best, per the CDC, with that mask you're wearing on your face to protect yourself. That's if you're an adult wearing it properly, fitted for your face. You know the kids aren't. We all know that. I have a lot to go through here, so I apologize. This is my child's mask. Okay? This is what it looks like. I don't know if you guys are okay with that, but I'm not. I'm not okay with that by one bit. Mandatory, here's all your facts. You wanted it? This is USC. Mandatory masking of school children is a bad idea. That's just one. I'm going to leave these here for you. This is from the NIH. Commentary, Physiology and Physiological Impact of Face Mask Usage During COVID-19 Pandemic. Psychology Today, Face Masks in Children's Emotion and Understanding. Whoever it was that was talking about the opening of school with the mental health, I'm really curious to see where you got your information, and I wouldn't get it from the governor's office, seeing as how he's bought and paid for, so we're not going to go there. Masking children, tragic, unscientific, and damaging. Another great source. Here's some more stuff about masks. Stanford study proves face masks worthless against COVID. EPA, United States, Environmental Protection Agency, again, shows you're 26% for what you're wearing on your face, and that's if the kids wear them properly. And we all know just by looking at them, they're not wearing them properly. What are we doing this for? 47 studies confirm ineffectiveness of masks for COVID, and 32 more confirm their negative health effects. You want to know how I found this? DuckDuckGo, not Google. That's how I found it. So there's that. Also, right here, it tells you specifically not to touch your face with your face mask. Okay, I'm running out of time here. Do not touch your face on the front of your face mask or it's soiled. It's no good, per the CDC. We're not following any of these guidelines, and you would need a KN95 mask to make this an actual thing. And we all know the house of cards is falling on this. We hear it in the... CNN said it, for Christ's sake. We all know where they stand on this. 65 studies reveal face masks do cause physical harm. Factcheckers.org, the most important, fact-checking the fact checkers. What do studies say about masks and COVID-19? 37 teachers have contacted me. 12 are actively looking for jobs. 1 quit, you don't know it already.
Jason, there's
29 staff members have contacted me. So there's your studies. Okay, there's your numbers.
I appreciate your comments, and you're going to leave that stuff. We'll make it part of the record. Thank you, and we will review it. Thank you. Joey, go ahead.
Joy Trushinsky for the record. I really resent the governor and the government pushing vaccines, especially for our kids when they have a survival rate of 99.998%. Also, if you are concerned about COVID-19 in the schools, why not push therapeutics? Because therapeutics, even increasing the vitamin C, D, and zinc of our children and giving them a multivitamin every day will keep them from even getting a cold. So I would start looking into therapeutics if we can give them free, like hydroxychloroquine, which has been used for 50 years and it has no side effects. That would be a good thing. And instead of using the COVID PCR test swabs, which I have been reading that are as dangerous as inhaling asbestos, instead, why don't we do antibody tests? COVID-19 tests, as they are today, are not accurate because it is so close to the flu and variants. And I just think that this plan, pushing vaccines, not mentioning therapeutics, giving our kids, making sure that they have a good diet, and giving an antibody test, which is less harmful and not harmful at all, actually, would be the thing to do. Well, thank you very much, but we just can't do this plan It's not right for our children.
Thank you, Joy. Miles?
Miles Humphreys for the record again. The first and foremost thing that we have to recognize is there are 0 laws on the books for this, any of it. There's 0. It's a mandate. That's basically his wish, our governor's wish. And so when the gal before with Mr. Stokes was talking about it and adhering to laws, there is no laws about face masks. There's 0 laws. We could ask Mr. Russell. There is 0 laws, federal or NRS, that says anything about face masks. 0. So when it says the CDC adheres to the guidance provided by the Nevada Division of Health and Human Services, it's just a guidance. There's no laws. So that's what we have to recognize first. And then on top of it, the school board was mentioning, oh, well, we need to keep it safe. You could keep it safe. For the people who feel that they want to mask their kids and it does safety for them because they've been programmed by the TV or whatever, and they're just, that's what they truly believe in, let them mask those kids and let them suffocate their own kids. That's up to them to do so. It's not up to the board. It's not up to anybody else. And if the parents who want to let the children breathe freely, they can do so as they see fit, because that is their right as a parent. And nobody should ever trump that. So I had to get that off my chest because we kind of skirt this as far as like, oh, well, we have to do this. We have to do this. No, you have to watch over the children and you have to make sure that the teachers and everything are under your guidance, but you have no legal action to say that the kids cannot breathe freely. And Mr. Russell can concur on that. So, and then the social distancing, that's not practical any way, shape, or form on this form, unless you're in a communist country to where they can actually mandate it and just, they could keep it to where that actually happens. We're in a social society. Kids are touching, hugging, feeling, and doing all that stuff. So the social distancing should actually be removed from that. And we're way past this. But I guess because of the fear mongering and everything else, that's going to stay going on forever. And on this thing, it says social and emotional health of students. We should also look at the social and health mental side of it, the emotional side of it, the psychological side of it, the physical side of it with the mouth, lungs, nose, cavities, zits, rashes, the fungal, all that. The cognitive decline and hearing impaired and everything else, that all comes into play with a mask. And I think it's time that we remove it, and you guys need to do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Miles. Jesse, looks like you're getting up. Yeah. Okay. Then Betsy, you can be next.
Okay, so just really fast, what my husband didn't
Would you
finish.
say your name for the record?
Oh, Jesse Tingle for the record.
Thank you.
What my husband wasn't able to finish, he has 37 teachers who have reached out to him who are against the mask, 37. 12 are actively looking for jobs. One has already, is going to quit, you just don't know it yet. And 29 staff members. That's quite a bit of staff and teachers that are against the mask. And it's all been anonymous. Some have said, you can use my name. Others have been too scared to come out and say anything in fear for losing their jobs, which is just crazy to me. Mike, thank you again on my husband's notes right here. He actually has what about the other counties, and you had mentioned that, so that's great. I also want to say, remember in 2019 when kids had colds, just regular colds, and nobody freaked out about it? Those were really good times, right? Can we get back to that? Because it is a cold for a child. There's plenty of studies, plenty of science to go along with that. Children are not dying at crazy rates from COVID. The director of the CDC said that there's around 3,500, but they don't know if it's with COVID or from COVID of children that are in the hospitals. It's quite a difference on wordplay we have there, which I know we have all seen, all of us. I just don't know what more people need, like what more evidence. If you Google, can men have babies? It says yes. Google says that. So we're going to take all of our evidence from Google when we all know that men cannot have babies, right? So we're all sick of it. We're not going to try to make our children be in some dangerous place where we can't protect them, right? We don't want that. Nobody wants that here. But the science shows that children are not being affected by this at high rates. That's just what I have to say. Also, Laurel, I know that you're going to be vice president. I'm not entirely sure what you're doing, but it's nice to have you look up. Just a thought, because I have a video of you not looking up for 3 minutes. Okay, well, just now that you're vice president, that's wonderful. Just a thought for you.
Thank you, Jesse. Betsy?
Betsy Strasburg. After listening to everybody, I have rewritten my comments. Number one, it's a false trade-off to say mask and stay in school, no mask and don't stay in school. You are all very intelligent people. The superintendent is a CEO of the school district. We expect you to make hard decisions. We can't always go back and say, get the data, get the data, get the data. We will be in a position of analysis paralysis. And you've all heard that because I know you have all private other professions. We can't be in that state of doing nothing, waiting for some thunderbolt to come from the sky to say when is the right time to make the right decision. It makes me really angry, and I'm getting very emotional now. I'll try to control myself. The persons who talked about the report said nothing was changed. Yes, nothing was changed, even though the environment has changed. We know we have a new variant which is less lethal. We know the positivity rate says nothing. It just says people were sick. The children do not get this disease as hard as the adults. There is 99.987% survival rate. The CDC doesn't say anything like that, and yet we push the CDC data information as the gospel truth. There is no mention in the CDC data about the VAERS data, which shows the outbreaks, the thousands of people who are dying out of the myocarditis and pericarditis heart inflammation by taking the vaccine. So if you are going to rely on a source of data, it needs to be balanced. And it needs to be balanced on the new information that is available, both on the disease and the new information. CDC said 75% of the COVID deaths had 4 comorbidities, which is type 2 diabetes and obesity. Director Walensky said that the unvaccinated are 20 times more likely to die from COVID. But if children have a survival rate of 99.987%, does the CDC information make any sense? We don't want a special class in the school district of the unvaccinated, and that is in your section 5A, who will be required to wear mask. Your anti-discrimination policy does not allow you to do that. I see my time is out, but I was so emotional, I could not finish all my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy.
Okay, thank you. I'll make this quick. Kathleen Sanchez for the record. Just a few things on this printout, it says here, wearing face masks not required for the school year, those who desire to wear it, and then it says, once the mandates are lifted. Again, I can't even figure out why we're under a mandate right now. Because the concern that was voiced was we're missing a lot of students. Well, I'll tell you what, there's no motivation to be there. We've got a really good snow season. Why not? A lot of these kids are ditching out and they're calling in sick, and that's the excuse that they're using. I know some of the kids, they're buddies with my son, and they're like, who cares? Nobody's going to care if we're here or not. We'll call out sick. So you have that lack of motivation to even respond. And there's a lot more kids in the school that are vaccinated than you know about. So the masks, even voluntary part-time, is a great idea, because I know a lot of the athletes that went out immediately and got vaccinated. Because of wrestling season, they wanted their season. And Laurel, you were saying about sports, wrestling's over. We're good there. Basketball is in full swing. We're good there. And baseball is gearing up. A lot of these kids are already vaccinated. They are rolling right along in their sports, rolling right along in their vaccinations. So masks or no masks, they should be given that option. And the Supreme Court hearing, that's all they kept talking about, was those that are vaccinated don't have to wear masks. That was a common theme in what was being said when I was listening to the hearing the other day. The other thing that's missing in this guide here is there's nothing at all about religious or medical exemptions that I could see. And that is allowed by OSHA. And so that should be allowed for our children. So if we keep up this farce that we are going to mask their face, we are not allowed to see their face in their school day, they should be given those exemptions. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard?
Good evening, Richard Nagel for the record. I think we need to focus on the requirements versus the recommendations. Okay, and if this, because again, the CDC to me has lost 100% credibility in the fact that, as Betsy previously said, they're walking back their death toll data by 75%. So again, we really need to seek other sources. Now, there's a Dr. McCullough out there who is an immunologist, and he is also a cardiologist, and he is saying that the masks are completely worthless. You might as well have a teddy bear. Okay? If that makes you feel better, have a teddy bear instead of a mask. I know it sounds silly, but he's trying to make a point. And I agree with him. So we need to kind of end the analysis paralysis and move on. There's a great book, if you want to get some more facts, by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Bobby Kennedy's son, JFK's nephew, wrote an extremely excellent book. He cites all of his data in there. It's called The Real Dr. Fauci. But it's well written, it's extremely well documented, and all kinds of studies are listed. So again, it's time to make a choice of where to go and lose the masks and save our children. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. She's trying to get it going.
I'm going to try and go quick. I know it's late. Okay, so Shanna Cobb Adams for the record, and just to give a quick intro for myself, I have 3 children. One is at the high school, I have 2 in high school still, one has already graduated. I work for Nevada Medicaid in statistics and healthcare policy, so I am very well versed in everything COVID. I would first want to give you guys, congratulations. I know your job is not easy, working at Medicaid. I'm often on that end as well, so I appreciate all that you guys are trying to do to get us back to normal. With that said, one point that I would like to make as reading, the reopening plan. I was first very just pleased that we were going to be opening for 5 days a week. The online learning was horrendous. And so at the start of this school year, I was just happy that we were going to be coming back on site, hopeful that we weren't going to have masks, and then everything changed, obviously. One thing that I'd like to point out is that your statement says the governor has returned authority to local school officials to mitigate the spread of COVID-19, but then later down in the document, we're listing once mask mandates are lifted. So I think that it would be helpful to have some clarification who is the true authority over what goes on in Carson City School District. I appreciate looking at the data in other counties, and I appreciate your suggestion, Mike, to do so. In addition, I want to kind of give, I'll do this as quick as I can, a personal story. I know that most kids are very healthy. My daughter that I speak of is not at all. She was diagnosed with kidney disease at age 2. She is in the high-risk category. She is at high risk of having severe complications from COVID. But in life, we take risks. We have taken risks for the last 13 years. Anything that goes around can land her in the hospital and eventually lead to kidney failure. So when she was 2 years old, there was discussions. Does she go to school? Kids pass things constantly, whether it's daycare, growing up. I did not want to raise my child in a bubble. This has been very difficult. I apologize.
It's okay.
This has been very difficult, spending as many years as I have trying to teach my child to not live in fear, to now be forced to have her live in fear because of this. When I have had to drive her to Stanford, when a parent sent their kid to school with chickenpox, which could land my daughter in the hospital or potentially kill her. I'm faced with my child's death every single day, her just walking around in society, and I still choose not to keep her in a bubble. I want her to have an education in person. I gave the choice to her at the start of the school year. I should have attended more of these meetings, and I plan to do so in the future. I want my child to grow up having the choice to take the risks that she's comfortable taking. She does not want to do online school. She wants to be in person, and that is something that I really hope that you guys take into consideration as you move forward. I know you're not going to make decisions today, but as you move forward with adjusting this, I really hope you take that into account. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other public comment at this time? Karen?
Good evening again, Karen Stevens. I'm going to keep this short because most of what I have written has already been said. And so I just want to double down on what the former audience members have said. But I would really like to encourage you to think back about the young lady that public comment was read by Renee, and just really think about what she said, because this is from her perspective. This is what she's living every day, and us grown-ups that aren't in their situations don't understand truly what they're going through, I don't believe, or we wouldn't have these mask mandates. We do live with risk. Just coming here, I could have got in a car accident. It's just absurd. I choose never to wear a mask. I want to be able to breathe fresh air and not have to rebreathe my carbon dioxide that my body wants to exhale. And I don't want the kids to have to do that either. One last thing I would like to say is I would like to thank Renee for all the work that she does behind the scenes. I truly believe that she is the rock that keeps these meetings going smoothly. I know how hard it is to transcribe all the comments that people say and to do all the business that she has to do. So I'd like to make a shout out to her. Thank you.
Yeah, I think everybody would, Renee is the key here. Thank you. Any other public comment at this time? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. But before we move on and before people start leaving, pardon?
Mr. President.
Yeah, I know. but I wanted to say something and ask for public comment. Just as long as, before people leave, I think as a board, we do appreciate your input. And I want you to know that, we do take it to heart and we listen to you guys. And we're going to make difficult decisions. And we know that, at least I'm thinking before long, we have to make that difficult decision. And we appreciate the research that's been done, the stuff that's provided to us. And thank you guys for showing up and sharing your opinions. Thank you. Now, moving on, we'll ask for any remote comments.
Mr. Varner, let me refresh here just to make sure.
Okay.
At this time, I have no additional public comment.
Okay. And I think the best way to proceed is I'd like to work as, partners if we can. We don't want to be opposing on opposite sides of things. Sometimes we're going to be, but the more we can work as partnerships, I think the better off we're going to be. And best for the kids and for the students, all the students. So that's my thoughts. Thank you. Now we'll move on to the next item. Sorry.
Just because this is a discussion only for Mr. Stokes and Mrs. Dockery, with page 3 on 5E, it's brought up the mask mandates, and I believe, that is inconsistent with some of the language in our plan. If we could, I think it's a, how to word that, because my understanding is we're using it if there's an outbreak of COVID-19, then the use of face masks may be employed. So I'm wondering if we can rephrase that sentence a little bit to make it relate to subsection B. Is that something, Mrs. Dockery? Or is that the language that the Department of Ed has wanted?
I think what we were trying to accomplish, what was said earlier, is that if masks are voluntary, that students and staff can wear them. So I'll rephrase that. That's what that's supposed to say. We added that little piece on the front, and I think that really wasn't needed. We should have just left it the way it was. But that's basically the intent, is if you lift the mask mandate, then people can still wear them if they want to. They're not prohibited from wearing them.
It would be to also our teachers and staff are
Yes.
mandated. So it does apply to that. So it's not just
Yes.
the students. Okay, thank
Correct.
you.
But we can wordsmith that, yes.
Can I, since we're into this
Sure,
discussion?
go ahead, Joe.
One of the speakers brought it up, and I thought it was in here. And I didn't want to be rude and read through it all, but I was skimming it while people were talking. Didn't we have an exemption clause in here? I mean, because I know there's religious exemptions and things like that.
We did not have it in this plan. It doesn't necessarily have to be in this plan.
I know it doesn't have to. it just-
And so we didn't add it. It wasn't asked. The state didn't ask, the Department of Education didn't ask us to add that. So I only addressed the things that the
Yeah.
state addressed, and you guys did not. You didn't put it in your original plan. So I mean, if you want to add something, we certainly could, but we don't, for the intents and purposes of meeting the state requirements, we can go above and beyond what's in this plan.
Right.
This is a a compliance document with regard to our federal funding. That's what this is tied to, is our federal
Yeah.
funding and the mandates within that law.
And I understand that, and I appreciate that. And I'm not saying rush to go put it in, but I know we have to review this and amend this. And I think at the next convenient time, exemptions exist and they're allowed. And so my thought would be at some point, it would be good to have that in here. And hopefully by the time we do that, exemptions are a moot point, but
That would be great.
yeah,
But
so
I-
thank you.
But on that course, I think that it should be in this report because it is part of a lot of the reports we have. So if somebody's looking at this, they should be able to know that that is available because this is the document people are looking at. So I think that should be written in this document.
We can add it. It just wasn't in the original, so we haven't had it in there for 6 months, even though it's existed. So if you want to add it now, we can certainly do that.
And I would. And I know we missed it the first time, but I think we should have it in now.
And I'll correct my statement to support that. I think it's a good idea.
Very good. Any other discussion? Comments? Okay, we've already closed public comment and remote comment, so we're going to move on to item number 15.
14.
Did I miss 14? I'm sorry. Yes, I did. I'm sorry. This is discussion and possible action to approve a resolution to change the boundaries of the Carson City School District trustee election areas or change the manner in which trustees are elected in order to comply with NRS 386.205. And this is for possible action. And Mr. Stokes is going to give the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. President. And as you recall, at our last school board meeting on December 14th, the clerk recorder of Carson City, Aubrey Rolat, was here and proposed changes to the existing trustee election districts. And her goal in changing or modifying these maps was based on the population within each district. So at that December 14th meeting, action was tabled on this particular item, and we just bring it back now. There's been significant opportunity for the public or trustees to look at these changes, and to my knowledge, we have not had any contacts at my office with regard to the recommended map. So staff recommends that we move forward and take action on this particular item.
Any questions from the board members for Mr. Stokes?
Mr. President, we did bring the maps again, if anybody wants to take a look at those.
Seeing none.
I'm comfortable, and I'd be happy to make a motion unless anybody has any comment.
Joe, go ahead and make the motion then. Thanks.
I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees adopt the resolution to change the boundaries of the Carson City School District trustees' election areas in compliance with NRS 386.205.
We have a motion. We have a second. Don second. Any public comment on this motion? No. Seeing none. Any remote comment?
No, Mr. Varner.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second, we'll call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition say nay. Seeing no opposition, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you, guys. All right, now we'll move on to item number 15. If I can get there. Now. I see you're up here already. It's discussion possible action to approve proposed Carson City School District academic calendar for the 2022-2023 school year. And this is for possible action. And Mrs. Fuson.
Thank you, President Varner, members of the board, Tasha Fuson for the record. It is that time of year when our Board of Trustees sets the school calendar for the following school year. By doing so in January, it affords our staff and our families the opportunity to plan in advance for travel and family events, graduations, etc. As I go through the calendar, it's worthwhile to note that the proposed 2022-23 calendar has a few changes, noticeable changes from previous calendars. So I'll go through those and the rationale for that when I get to that point. I do want you to know that the first draft of the proposed calendar was shared with the association presidents and principals on December 1st to review with their stakeholders and provide feedback. It was then posted to our website, emailed to our school-based community partners on December 16th as well for feedback. We have updated the website as we've gone along as changes were made. The latest version, which is in your packet, has been posted on our website since January 7th, which of course was just last week. But we've been taking into consideration feedback from our different stakeholder groups and making some nuanced changes as we go. The proposed start date for the 2022-2023 school year will be August 15th. That's the third Monday in August, which is in alignment with our past practices. As always, when I present the calendar to you, I did look up comparable dates for Washoe, Lyon, Douglas, and Clerk. I want you to know that Douglas does not currently have their proposed calendar for next year posted, so I don't have the information for you. But Washoe County is also planning to start on August 15th for the 2022-23 school year. Lyon has their start date for the 17th. They typically start on Wednesday of that week. And Clark County would be starting a whole week earlier on the 8th of August. Our fall break is proposed to be November 21st through the 25th. Washoe County, as you all know, has in their balanced calendar a little bit of a different approach. So they do the first 9 weeks of school, then they have a fall break. That fall break for them falls October 3rd through the 7th. But then they also have the Wednesday through Friday off during the week of Thanksgiving. So they kind of have a partial fall break there, if you will. Lyon County would be exactly the same of ours. I noticed they're looking to take the entire week of Thanksgiving off. And Clark County would have just the Wednesday through Friday that week. Winter break, it would be from December 22nd through January 6th, with school coming in session on Monday the 9th. All other districts have very similar to identical winter breaks, with the exception of Clark, who would be going out the week earlier. So they would go December 19th through January 2nd. The only reason I bring up Clark, for instance, for you is because we do have a lot of sporting events, as you all know. So we do take Clark counties into consideration. When it comes to our neighboring counties, obviously Lyon, Washoe, and Douglas, it's typically because we have staff members who will live in those areas. And so we try to at least keep that into consideration with breaks so that they can hopefully be in somewhat similar break times with their children if their children are in different counties. So I just wanted to point that out. So this is why I look at those. For spring break, we would be going April 3rd through April 10th. In our district, we do anchor that around Easter per our families' and community's preference. Washoe County would be March 20th through March 31st, which is a couple weeks before ours. They do not align theirs with Easter's. Lyon would be exactly the same as ours, and Clark County is very early, would be March 13th through the 17th. So Clark would go first, then Washoe for 2 weeks, then us. It's interesting how that dominoed. The proposed last day of school would be Thursday, June 1st. Washoe is 1 week later, June 9th. Washoe, of course, has their balanced calendar, which gives them 2 weeks off during spring break as well, so they extend their school year. Lyon County would be off 1 day later on June 2nd, and Clark County actually finishes really early on May 22nd. So, of course, they start a week earlier than us as well. We do like to try to end our school year on a Wednesday or Thursday to provide the high school, Carson High School in particular, time to verify transcripts. So just so you know, that's why we always try to end on a Wednesday or Thursday. Pioneers graduation is slotted to be held on Thursday, June 1st at 6 o'clock. Therefore, Carson High Schools would be the Saturday, June 3rd. We do have 3 contingency days that are noted for inclement weather. That's June 2nd, 5th, and 6th. And then the start and end times would remain for the same for all of our schools for a normal school day. So now here's the big changes. So this is where we get into the noticeable changes. As you all know, NRS allows for 5 professional learning days within the school year calendar. For this proposed calendar, we would like to combine our early release days and our professional learning days into 16, what we're going to call professional learning minimum days on Wednesdays. This change will allow our teachers to meet approximately 2 times a month for 2.5 hours versus 1 time a month for 1 hour, with 1 full professional learning day per quarter. The proposed change is in response to requests from teachers and site administrators stating that the 1 time a month early release is not a frequent enough meeting time for them to really be productive. And the 1 hour isn't productive for them either. By the time they get students off campus and students picked up, they're really only ending up with, half hour to 45 minutes. And then by the time you're only meeting once a month, they're having to spend all their time recapping what they talked about a month ago and then trying to move on. So they're not finding that it's very productive. So that's the feedback we've had from our staff and requesting more frequent times. for them to meet. So this was kind of our happy medium for that. In previous calendars prior to COVID, as you know, we had 2 early release days a month, as well as the 4 professional learning days. So I know that there's always concern about having early release days or altered schedules for our families. But in reality, this proposed calendar reduces the number of odd scheduled days for families. It makes them more consistent. I'd also like to note that our
So,
sites. Go
Tasha,
ahead.
before you go on, just to hit that one. So those professional learning days, that's all day?
No, those are half days. They're actually what we, on a minimum day schedule, which in essence, the kids get out. Like for Carson High School, the times start and end times are on the calendar, but for Carson High, for instance, it's a 4-hour school day. So the kids would go to school from 7:40 to 11:40. By the time you empty campus and get students out on buses, it's about 2 o'clock. So it gives the school 2.5 hours to utilize for their PLCs and their professional development. So it's a 4-hour school day, give or take, right? Schools have different schedules or bell times.
So they're not early release days because they're minimum days.
In
But
essence, what we were trying to do, and please excuse the terminology, I was trying very hard to come up with a different name to not confuse people. So on early release days, typically those have been early release Mondays, as you all know. We've typically gotten out just an hour early. And then on our professional learning days, they've been full days. And then in the past, we've also had minimum day. And a minimum day is like for parent-teacher conferences. So we've had multiple bell schedules. This way you have just a regular day schedule and this professional learning minimum day schedule. You just have 2 instead of having 4 different bell times. So that was my, and I can call it something else. It was literally my attempt to try to give it a different name to cut down on confusion, but I think I may have caused more confusion, but that was the rationale behind it. So our sites use that time currently for professional learning activities. It provides our teachers the opportunity to work in teacher teams, to plan high-quality lessons, review student achievement data, and common assessments. Also gives an opportunity to work on things like new social and emotional learning curriculum. I did hear from our community here, as you did, that it's a real concern about what our schools are doing to address the mental health and welfare of our students. Well, what we're doing is implementing an MTSS system that requires training time, and it requires time for teachers to be able to work together to come up with those common plans. So the schedule then builds that in and provides that time for teachers to be able to do those activities. So I wanted to note that. Best practice research actually encourages weekly PLCs for teachers or professional learning community meetings. So we've actually really encouraged our schools to try to carve out time for teachers by having things like no meeting Mondays and trying to carve out, 20 minutes or half hour here. It's very difficult for schools when you have 504 meetings, IEP meetings, athletic events. It's next to impossible to do that on the very small amount of time that's before school and after school. So I want you to know it's not that our teachers aren't willing to commit their time before and after school. It's just that, again, looking at any one of our schools, you have at least an elementary, typically at least 2 to 3 IEPs a week. At the high school, you'll have 4 or 5 IEPs a day. So it's just impossible to not schedule out or carve out time for our folks to do that. We do believe that this new proposed approach will provide the time teachers need while still maximizing instructional time, as this change actually increases the instructional minutes students are in school over the course of the year. I think it's worthwhile to note, truly and honestly, that when I was the principal of Carson High 6 years ago, Sue Kima came over to me and said, "Tasha, we need to do something because your instructional minutes, we're on an alternative calendar for our district." So in an alternative calendar, we are not bound to 180 instructional school days by state law. We're bound to instructional minutes over the course of the year, okay? And the way Carson High's calendar went, there was only 2 days of additional instructional minute time. The reason why that's important is every year you know that I typically end up writing a letter requesting permission from the Department of Ed to not require us to use contingency days to make up things like snow days or smoke days. Well, again, Sukima 6 years ago came to me and said, Tasha, Carson High only has 2 days of time built in. If we end up with a third snow day, we're going to have to bring the kids and the staff back. So we need to do something about that. So we made some slight changes. The reason why I'm using Carson High as the example is not just because I was the principal formerly, but because the high school has the highest level of required daily minutes under NRS. So even though you might have the same number of instructional day, the day might be the same at a high school as it is an elementary school. Elementary is not required to be in school as many instructional minutes as a high schooler is over the course of the year. So currently, again, from her coaching on that, we lengthened our school day, but we also, as you know, have reduced the number of early release days. And actually, instead of using 5 professional learning days, have used 4. We've done other things. Currently, this proposed schedule actually has students, high school students, receiving 10 days of instructional time beyond the minimum required by NRS. It actually has our elementary students exceeding the requirement from state law by over 20 days. Carson City School District will never have to revert to remote learning for snow days, I would say, unless we have unprecedented blizzards, which yes, please, somebody find something to knock on for me. This is plastic. But you know what I'm saying? We are well beyond that point in time at this point in time. Our students literally in high school are spending 2 weeks, 10 days of time that exceeds requirement in front of their teachers, even with this proposed calendar. And again, at the elementary, 20 days, an entire month of instructional time more in front of a teacher getting direct instruction contact time. So we have made it a priority as a district to make that happen, but we also need to be respectful of the requests from our staff members. So I've worked with OCEA back and forth and with CESA back and forth on this. And that's why there was myriad changes as we were kind of trying to nuance these changes. So right now, we do have the backing of all of our associations in support of this calendar. We did give an opportunity again for schools, and we asked them to share them with their PTAs, PTOs, get parent feedback that way. I can tell you I've had no concerns that have been raised to me other than one CESA member who sent Carrie Finn a note and said, hey, can you just note that, it is kind of hard for parents to find, childcare. I get that. But I also think it's worthy to note that in our surrounding districts in Washoe, they have every single Wednesday as an early release. In Lyon, they have every single Friday as an early release. In Douglas County, they have 2 early releases a month as well as professional learning days. So for our community to have 2 minimum days a month to afford our staff the opportunity to have that time for professional learning and PLCs, in addition to the fact that we exceed the required amount of time at the state by 2 weeks at the high school level and 4 weeks at the elementary, I don't think it's a lot of us to ask our community to afford that opportunity for our staff members. We also do have 2 days prior to the start of the school year, as you know, for professional learning. One of them is usually used by the school, one's used by the district, and then the teachers have a teacher work day. You can see on the calendar, we're still planning on keeping our new teacher training. That's always been a very popular thing. We would actually, I'd like to make it 4 days again instead of 3 if we can find funding. Because we did take the NEPF training out, thinking that we might be overwhelming our teachers at the beginning of the year with NEPF training when they're just trying to get their classroom started. And what we found is no, they really actually kind of want that before the first day of school. So we're going to look to see if we can do that. But again, I want you to know I did also give our site-based community partners an opportunity to provide feedback to say, is this going to be an issue for Boys and Girls Club? Is it going to be an issue for Salvation Army? I did not get any feedback from any of those community partners indicating it's a problem. So at this point in time, I am requesting that the board approve the proposed calendar. I am happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Any questions for Tasha from the board? Stacy?
Going back to those PL days, Is there any way to make them regular so they're like the second and third Wednesday or the first and second, just for parents?
Trustee Wilkie, I'm so glad you asked that. We did consider that. One of the things that we wanted to do was, one, make sure that there was for our high schools that are both on block schedules, the same number of A days as B days, so that they don't have a disproportionate instructional minutes. So we took that into consideration, made some changes there. I also didn't want to put them on weeks that we might have another holiday, which we can go back and reconsider, but that's been our past practice, is that we try to make those days on weeks that are full weeks. So those are the types of things that drove it. I also didn't want to make them on the first Wednesday of every month, because that's when we have our principals meeting, and the principals are like, please do not have me go to a principals meeting in the morning, then have to go back and try to jump into PD. So all of those things were taken into consideration, which is why it seems kind of wonky that they're not on the same, rotation. But there was a reason behind it.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board members? Seeing none, Joe?
No, I was going to say, I had a couple of questions, but you and I spoke when we met with Mr. Stokes, and we had similar questions, so I'm going to defer my time to you.
Okay, my concern is I don't think this calendar would be a problem for the high school because they're able to take care of themselves. But I do see a problem with having so many professional learning days, whatever we're going to call them, twice a month for parents of elementary kids. I've been approached by some parents already that they're saying, hey, I can't find a babysitter every Wednesday or every other Wednesday. Then if you look at it further, you have an additional 5 early release days for elementary kids. And so that's a total of like 20, 21 days, however you want to figure it, early release days that parents are going to have to find babysitters. And it's not easy to find half-day babysitters. So I'm wondering what consideration was given towards that when you made this plan?
Well, I would strongly recommend that our families take a look at our community-based practice, our partners that work with us, the Boys and Girls Club.
Well, the Boys and Girls Club, I know is full now. They're not taking any more kids
For this year.
Yeah,
Yes,
for this year.
But for moving into next year, they do open enrollment, so I would.
But they only take a certain amount of people,
that.
right?
I don't know what their capacity limitation is. I'm sure it's based on staffing or based on enrollment, so I know it's kind of variable. I guess we could do the opposite and go back to full days off. That means that parents then end up finding babysitting for full days off. I think that doesn't meet the needs of our staff to do that. I think that this, again, is a good compromise because if you look at, again, pre-COVID, we had 19 early release days and 4 professional learning days. So this is actually still less in terms of the days that parents have to make arrangements than it was pre-COVID. So I understand those pieces, but I think if we give them the information now in January, hopefully they can find accommodations for their children. Again, I think it's just really important for our staff. Again, I'm open to, we have had a request by OCA to take a look at whether or not we would be interested in looking at Washoe's balanced calendar. I don't know if that's something, but again, Washoe County has every Wednesday off early. I guess I don't know how to respond to your query, Mr. Varner, because again, our surrounding communities or our surrounding counties have similar schedules. So I'm sure they have the same problems. I don't know that I can solve that for families.
And I'll just say, I mean, I have nieces and nephews that go to school in Washoe County, and I don't think we want to adopt that schedule. There's a lot of complaints about real long winter breaks. And I think that another thing I want to point out, just like I said with the superintendent's evaluation at our last meeting, there's some of us who are pushing the district very hard about test scores. You can't expect practices to change if you're not allowing time to have professional development. And so we have to figure out, are we going to push and not give resources to make the changes we're accepting or we're expecting, or are we going to maintain the status quo, and then we're going to get the status quo. And I think that as a board, that's what we need to think about. It's tough, and I think that if you had, as a principal, I don't think it matters if I had the second and fourth Wednesday or it's scattered, people would forget. That's why we do the connected and we send the notes home and we put on Facebook. So it's kind of it's a challenge everybody faces, but schools need time to prepare and to train. And it's just not in the schedule. If we don't allocate that time, we can't expect growth. Just my opinion.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to the professional learning time, but my concern was, for the elementary school parents, basically, because like I said, high school, most of them can take care of themselves or go home and stay by themselves. It's really hard for parents who are both working then to make arrangements every other week for a babysitter. They're not easy to find. Child cares are full. So that was my point. I just wanted to point out, that there is some concern on my part on that.
Point out too, I think it was the year before the 2020 school year, maybe it was 2019, that Fremont and Fremont and Empire Elementary Schools requested additional early release days as part of their school improvement plans or as part of that. And so there have been elementaries that have asked for more early release days. And I guess when I first read this, I thought those were professional learning days with non-school days. And I was like, why are they all on Wednesdays when we've got holidays? And then I realized they're early release / minimum days. And I guess I don't want to adopt Washoe's longer breaks and much shorter summers, but there's even a part of me that wonders if having maybe every Wednesday, building that, and I don't think that we need to do that, but there is some consistency in having it every week for parents to make arrangements and planning, and even parents who choose to do supplemental extracurricular activities on those days, it gives them time to schedule it. If that was something that they knew every Wednesday they could schedule piano lessons or horseback riding lessons or whatever activity they wanted to do, that would give them more time to schedule that if it was consistent. That being said, I'm fine with it being right now a compromise between, because I like the way that we're not taking the full days for professional development, because I do think our kids are going to continue to need as much time in seat as they can. And so I think this is a good compromise to give the teachers the time that they need, where the previous early release days didn't give them as much time, but it still keeps our kids in seat in school more. So I think I rambled, but hopefully you understood where I was.
Any other board discussion? Joe?
Tasha, I just want to, first of all, I want to thank you. I mean, I've been having these conversations for 9 years with Sue and now you, and doing the calendar is a tough job. There are so many considerations. And I'm with President Varner in theory that, trying to do something that helps these families out, because they're in a tough spot like all of us. And it's hard. I remember when my kids were younger, it was hard then to find half day, but I understand why we're doing it. So I don't have a solution. I could come up with a different schedule and there'd be just as many holes, if not more. Well, there'd be more if I did it. But I appreciate the work that goes into this, and we're not going to satisfy everybody. And to Trustee Walker's point, yeah, I'm going to push people. I mean, I want to improve test scores, and I want to make sure our teachers and our staff and everybody has the ability to achieve that. And if things like this is what it takes, it's a sacrifice on everybody's end, and I know that. So I don't have a better solution. So I just want to thank you for the effort and the thoughtfulness that went into this.
Thank you, Trustee Cassioppo.
Stacy?
Have we looked at any, I think when Empire and Fremont did this, they actually had a grant that helped them out and had after school. They had somewhere for the kids to go during that didn't have childcare. I'm not sure, because like you said, it's been 2 years. But have we ever looked into looking at grants that would add maybe an enrichment program for those kids that can't find daycare or can't get into the Boys and Girls Club during that period?
So in the past, we've had the 21st Century Grant at several of our schools. Many of our schools already have after-school program. We typically cancel that programming on these days because the people who have to run those programs are typically our teachers. And if our teachers are running after-school programs, then they can't be involved in the professional learning and professional learning community meetings. So it's kind of backfires on us. That being said, I'm sure we can look into, we can work with our staff to say, maybe it's a time that they could have some of the paraprofessionals or something, but then the paraprofessionals don't get their professional learning either because we typically do that at the same time. I mean, that is the big challenge, is that a sacrifice has to be made somewhere. So, if we either want to provide professional learning to our staff, to be able to meet all these requirements and expectations that the federal government, the state, and our community has for us, then we have to provide that time. When we provide that time, that means students can't be in school. I mean, we know that. I think we all know that, but there's no real good answer to that, which is why I was bringing up our community partners. I feel that we are really well positioned in our district compared to other districts that I've been in, other schools that I've led, where we haven't had that community partners that we have here. We're extremely blessed in Carson City schools, in our district and in our county, to have us as such a strong Boys and Girls Club and to have such a strong partnership, for instance, with the Salvation Army and, a few of the other programs that we have. So to me, we capitalize on that, maybe take a look with, see if there's other external groups who would be willing to work with us. I'm always open to those ideas, but it's just that becomes the challenge. And Mr. Varner, I know you're absolutely correct. We've been hearing from our own staff members that daycare is a absolute challenge. There's not enough daycare providers, and we know that. I don't know how to fix that as a district.
Yeah, I wish I did, but I don't either. When you reached out to the Salvation Army Boys and Girls Club, the bridge, I think, that picks up kids too, right?
I'm not aware. The folks that I sent our calendar out to and asked them for feedback are school-based programming that we work with in that capacity. So I didn't reach out to the bridge.
Yeah, because I'm wondering, did they commit to picking up the kids at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock on these Wednesdays?
So what
they may have other things going on, I'm not sure.
So what happens is after we set our calendar, then they work their programming. So they rework the programming. That's what they do every year. So they look forward to us again, setting our calendar in January so that then they can look to doing their staffing, their hiring, coming up with that. So that's the way it's worked in the past. I haven't had a special meeting with them this year to have a conversation with them, but I mean, that's kind of been our partnership as we've gone along.
Yeah, I wish I had a solution, but I know we got to provide professional learning for the staff. Whether it's better to do 1 day a month, a full day for the community, I don't really know.
Well, I guess what I can say is, so that was my attempt over the last 6 weeks to get the feedback from our stakeholders. So working with OCA, working with CESA, working with our administrative association, working with our executive cabinet group on our campus, asking for feedback from community partners. I'm hoping that folks have had the opportunity to weigh in and express their concerns, and that we've come up with an option that people have had that time to have that input. It wasn't done in isolation, and
But
although
did you reach out to parents or just basically
so
staff
to
members?
schools to work with their leadership teams. Obviously, we have 7,800 students. So in the past, we've not, for instance, done a survey. I can tell you with the stakeholder groups that I've listed and that I've worked with, it was interesting enough to try to come to as much of a consensus as we've done. Most people have said exactly what former President Cacioppo, past President Cacioppo stated is, thank God you're the one putting the calendar together and not me. I got that response from almost everyone that I've worked with. So I think we all kind of just understand that it becomes what's the least of the evils for everyone that tries to to do the best we can to offer what we can for folks. And this is the compromise. This is probably the 8th different draft Miss Renee has put together for me. She's very patient with me every time I tell her to change a date, move a thing, change it. So it's not that, again, input wasn't taken, solicited, or considered.
Yeah, I know it's a difficult job. Thanks. Any other discussion? Seeing none, then it'll be time to ask for a motion.
I'll move that we accept the academic calendar for 2022 and 2023 school year as submitted.
That comes after the motion, right? We have a motion.
Second,
or started.
Wilkie.
Okay, second by Stacy. Now, any public comment on this motion? Just state your name for the record, please.
Hello, my name is Jamie Davis, and I am the PTO president at Carson Middle School. Okay. I am the mother of 4 kids, 2 in high school, 1 at the middle school, and 1 in the elementary school. I am a substitute teacher and have subbed all levels in the Carson School District, including being a full-time substitute for Carson Middle during quarantine. I sub most of the time at Carson Middle, and it is definitely more challenging than any other level. Today, I am representing the parents of Carson Middle to ask for the board to consider adding parent-teacher conferences in the school calendar for the middle school level. Parents would like the opportunity to meet with teachers to discuss their child's progress after school has been in session for a while, like after the quarter, which is done at the elementary school. Not just to discuss concerns, but to feel connected to who their child's teachers are and what is happening in their classroom. The middle school has done student-led conferences, but these do not give the parents any connection with the teachers. Students just basically show the parents their grades and test scores, and parents have to sign off on it. It's common for a child to have a different perspective of what is going on at school than the teachers. Parents need that connection to the teacher to support both their child and the teacher in what is actually happening in the classroom. Middle school students don't need their parents less after elementary school, they need them more to help them navigate through all the changes they are going through. Teacher and parent collaboration is key to a student's success in school at all levels. I was a junior high math resource teacher for 9 years. I was given many students with behavior and academic struggles because of my master's degree in special education. I found parent-teacher conferences invaluable to understanding my students and creating a positive relationship with the parents and guardians. Meeting with parents and guardians gave me a connection that fostered better communication and a working relationship that curbed behavior problems throughout the year. I have witnessed this at Carson Middle when teachers have said to me, "That kid doesn't cause problems in my class because I know the parents or the family." The parent-teacher connection is so important for middle schoolers, especially after the uncertainty and turmoil they have witnessed in the last year and a half. Now, yes, lots of parents won't come, but I'm here to say that there are parents that want to be given the opportunity to come to the school and discuss their child, even if just for reassurance that their kid is doing good things. I personally have no problem going to the school anytime and talking to my kids' teachers, but that's my world and I'm comfortable with it. But many parents don't feel comfortable and they are intimidated by the school scene and feel teachers don't want to be bugged after school just to talk about their child. Parents have told me they feel unwelcome and they feel they lose a connection to their child's world once they enter middle school. When I was a junior high teacher, the format most liked by teachers was students having minimum days, like the elementary school, and then teachers staying in their classrooms with a few chairs outside their door, and each hour was specified for certain letters of the alphabet, and some exceptions were made for parents that couldn't make that time. One of the days, the teachers would leave the students with the students, but then come back from 4 to 6 to give parents more time choices. I hope you will consider putting in the time for parent conferences.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Any other public comment? We'll close in-person public comment. Any remote public comment?
Let me refresh one more time, Mr. Varner. No, I have no public comment, Mr. Varner.
Okay, the public comment will be closed. Sure, go ahead.
Since we had the one public comment, just to ask, Has that been considered at the middle school level? And again, it adds another dynamic to things, but I just wanted to get your take on that.
I did have take the time to go over and speak with Principal Sadler. I did not have an opportunity to speak to Principal Connolly specifically on parent conferences. I think what was said is absolutely true, that the student-led conferences were not deemed a success at our school. I think the schools, I believe we did them for 6 years. I know we did them at the high school as well. And what typically happened is, we would have a group of parents that would come. They would sit down with their kids. The feedback from those families were that they already knew the information because their students were giving them, and they had those conversations and relationships. So it wasn't really a good use of their time. And the families that we were really trying to engage typically didn't come to the school, so it wasn't deemed highly effective. So that is why we got rid of the student-led conference piece. Now, however, what was said is more so around having the elementary model. The challenge to the elementary model is the typical middle school teacher has 150 students a day. So versus an elementary teacher who has 22 to 25. So to set up 3 minimum days that allows for all 22 parents to come in over the course of the 3 days, so you can have a one-on-one conference that's doable at the middle school level, again, with 150 students. It's not, it's just not mathematically possible to provide enough time for allow that to happen. Now, we could have minimum days and then just have it as designated time where those families who were interested or wanted to then could sign up. I mean, you could do that. Typically, you would figure then that each middle school teacher could have time to meet with approximately 22 to 25 of their parents over the course of those 3 days out of the 150 to 180, depending on the schedule that they have. It's possible. I think the overarching concern to that was that it's really not going to get to it's not going to be enough time to get to the parents that we really need to try to engage in academics, because the parents who would volunteer to come and do that are typically engaged. And what they do currently right now is at a parent request, they will schedule a parent-teacher conference. So any parent who's interested in having a conference can call the school counselor. The school counselor will call a meeting together of all the teachers, and the parent can come and meet with them. It does take the initiative of the parent to call the school and schedule that time. And we're not, she's not incorrect in saying that, yes, we have a lot of conferences. We, as I pointed that out, as a former special ed teacher with you, you have a lot of IEP meetings or 504 meetings, et cetera. So I'm not saying that that's opportune either. So again, just in getting to the root of that and talking to Principal Sadler, he said, I'm always interested to see if there's schools out there that are having success. So under the existing framework of just mimicking what we're doing at the elementary, not really an interest on behalf of administration. However, there is an interest in researching to see if there are middle school models out there that are being successful in meeting the needs of the broader scope of parents and not just a small sampling. So I think it's definitely something for us to research. I think it's something that the schools, and again, I'm sure Principal Connolly would agree, I just haven't had a personal conversation with them. So, but we're always looking for ways to engage parents. And I think that's really the point, is we need to figure out ways to proactively engage parents in the academic aspect of their child's education, and we need to do a better job of that. So I think that's something that we would be looking to investigate and to see if there's other, like I said, other options out there. And we could definitely address it and bring it back in terms if it did mean, early release days, for instance, or minimum days, for the middle schools like the elementaries. But at this point in time, that's kind of where we're at in that thought mindset.
Go ahead, Laura.
I would just echo, as a former PTA president at Carson Middle School several years ago, that was one of the main concerns of parents, is they had connection with the school and their students and their teachers, and then they hit middle school and it's no there's so little. I think the Parent Square has helped, but I still think there's a need for making sure that parents still feel welcome to feel involved in their students' middle school activities. And I think there needs to be I agree this, I did the student-led conferences with my kids. Those were not the best information on how it was, but I'm a little disappointed, and maybe it's because I had a year off from middle school and then we had COVID, but that there's just nothing being done now. And I think there needs to be something more. My son made an appointment this last week with the change of semesters in one of his electives and went and saw the counselor and got a schedule change, which I think is great initiative for a sixth grader. But I also think maybe the counselor should have called me when my sixth grader was requesting a schedule change, and I haven't heard from them. So I do think we need to definitely work on improving parent involvement at the middle school levels.
I completely agree, Trustee Crossman. And again, I think both of our principals would. I can tell you just anecdotally that one of the things that both schools are looking to do next year is bring back the teaming model, because for parents, it made a little bit easier to know, and for the teachers. So if I'm a math, science, English, and social studies teacher, we team and we have the same set of 160 kids, however many kids that we work with. So then we know those kids really well versus having the entire, 300 class of 328th graders that are dispersed amongst maybe 2 or 3 different English teachers, right? So it just helps build that relationship piece, helps teachers be able to work together and plan around students. And then I think a natural evolution of that might then be, how do we include parents in on that in that model? So again, I think really what Ms. Davis's statement's really doing is bringing to light the need. We definitely have a need, and I don't think anyone would dispute that, especially at this time after the 2 years that we've had, that we need to figure out how to positively re-engage our families versus right now it seems to be most of the outreach and the time we're spending is on negative things when we're dealing with behaviors, et cetera. So I 100% agree that that's something that we need to investigate and look into, and hopefully come up with a plan for how to do that in an effective way.
I guess I'll ask for any more comments at this point before we take the vote.
I guess I would just express the hope that that plan can be made by next school year. It's only January. So hopefully if there's an adjustment that can be made, we already have minimum days that are mapped out for elementary conferences. Even if they're not modeled after elementary, if there's something, maybe they could work with those days on the calendar, or we could make an adjustment to it, because I think that would be important to add by next year.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the table. Go ahead and call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay, and I'm a nay, only because I'm not sure we gave the parents enough consideration on getting out of school every Wednesday as far as babysitting, especially elementary schools. I do think the rest of the calendar's fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tasha. Next would be item number 16, would be the approval of consent agenda. Before I take a motion on that, on page 7 of the minutes, there was corrections that were made at the top of the page where you look at Karen Stevens' statement, where she read the statement from Dr. Robert Malone. She wanted to clarify a couple things. That she was referring to Dr. Malone's statement, and on the last paragraph that hasn't been changed, the last sentence, I should say, that hasn't been changed yet, it'll be changed to, in summary, Mrs. Stevens stated that Dr. Malone does not believe children should receive the COVID-19 vaccine, instead of just Karen Stevens saying it. And that was a request that she made to clarify, which I've talked to Renee about already, so that would be the only change as far as I know. So we'll have item 16, we'll take a motion.
Clarifying question.
Sure.
So everybody who has public comment who wants to come in and revise what they said during the meeting, are we going to revise the minutes for every one of those people, or are the minutes to capture what was actually said in the minute?
You know, I would think that just whatever's captured, and I know that Renee does a very good job of capturing everything. This is probably a one-time thing.
Well, we can't, I think it has to be the same for everybody. So
Yeah.
did she actually say
Yes.
what the minutes are changed to? Or I don't think we allow anybody to come in and revise what they're saying. And I think that's a bad precedent because we're going to have hundreds of people coming in and wanting to change all of our minutes. I think that's, I don't agree with that.
Okay. I see your point. You know, I do. So anyway, we have the minutes on the table for the agenda, approval of the consent agenda. And I take your point, Mike. Thank you.
Just for clarification, so what we have in our minutes that are all stapled together is what she actually said. And the piece of paper that we had here with the revision is something that she wanted to
what she
say.
said that her comments was she was reading a statement from Dr. Malone, and that she did not say that she did not believe that the students or the kids should take a vaccine. That she was quoting Dr. Malone. So we don't have to change it. I mean, it's whatever you guys desire.
Well, and in my mind, what I'm thinking, and I'm looking at Ryan for guidance, if she felt like she was misquoted at a public comment of an upcoming meeting, she could clarify her comments. But I think for us to go in and edit comments that were made in a public meeting is setting a really bad precedent.
Ryan?
Mr. President, there's a couple things I think that you could do on this. One, the requested change could be approved subject to the condition that somebody review the audio, because the meetings are being recorded, to see if it is what she actually said. If it is, then the requested change can be made. If the minutes prior to the change reflect what was actually said, then Mr. Walker, or Trustee Walker is right. The minutes should be approved as is, and Ms. Stevens can clarify her comment in a future public comment.
Okay. Why don't we leave it as is, and then if she wants to come in, like you said, Mike, and on the public record, clarify her statement, that probably may be the best thing to do. So we have the approval of the consent agenda, and this is for possible action. And any other board discussion? We'll go ahead and call for a motion then.
Make one. I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Any second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Any other board discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Any public comment on the motion? Seeing none. Any remote?
No, Mr. Varner.
Okay, we'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Then we'll go on to informational items. Just for discussion, you guys can read that, or I don't know if I need to read that. Okay. And then requests for future agenda topics. Stacy?
No, I was just
Stacy
saying
went.
Joe had his.
Who's going? Laurel? Okay.
Just a request, we just saw the special board meeting for the superintendent search, and I just wanted to have an update, keep it on there, and I guess we'll be doing it next week, but, how many applicants we have, how many, because there was some discussion when we met with Dr. Oliver the first time about reviewing the applicants and whether or not they'd be summarized. So I just would like a little bit more clarification on that. And it'll probably happen next week, but.
Well, Ryan, under informational items, can we give a 20-second update on what we learned yesterday related to Trustee Crossman's question?
Are you asking if you can respond right now to her question? Yeah, I think you can. There's a question about a future agenda item, which is the superintendent search. So if you have any information related to that, it's on the agenda as a future informational topic. So if anybody has a question about it, you can answer that.
Okay. Just real quick, yesterday we had our meeting with Mr. Stokes and we called Dr. Oliver to ask her how many applicants we had. We received 10 applications. The application deadline is now closed. 3 applications were from within our district. The other 7 were from outside the district, but we don't have any information on, we were not given any information on who any of the applicants were.
And just before we close the meeting, just a reminder of the special meeting coming up on the 18th, 5 o'clock. It's here in the boardroom. And unless there's anything else, we'll go ahead.
I have. Just on request for future agenda topics, I mentioned it earlier. Superintendent Stokes, I was thinking about that before the meeting and one of the parents brought it up, but just a report on the school violence. I know we can't get into specifics, of course, but maybe the varying degrees of violence we have in some kind of informational tally format. I'll defer to your judgment, but minor violations versus serious violations. And there was an indication that nothing or very little is being done. I know that's not the case, but maybe some clarification as to the range of punishments that maybe were considered or imposed. And then I'd like to get an update from Ann Sear regarding masks, and we talked about that before. Just, I'm not even sure how to pose the question, so I can work with you and President Varner on that, but looking at the stats and how we're interpreting them, but also, I think like Trustee Walker said, we have one state health department, but we have different districts' interpretation on how to respond to this. But we have Douglas without masks or voluntary masks. Lyon County at least has some schools that are not having mandatory masks, and we're still in mandatory masks. And I think just some data related to
And
where
Joe,
are we at?
to clarify, we have the same Quad County Health Department, so it's not.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
the
meant the same Quad County Health Department. No, you're right. But just some clarification on the data in hopes that between your meeting with the superintendents and the governor's staff and the information we're seeing, just to get a better perspective on where we're at, and then maybe we can make some decisions on where we're going. It would help me out. That's all.
Any other topics for future agenda items from any of the staff?
Clarified, the meeting is in here, because I thought I read in here that it was at the middle school.
It changed. It was, and then this room became available.
Initially, it wasn't available, and then it became available, so it's
it's here.
I think one of the things that would be very helpful is a formal document with dates of, there's 2 people I feel like that kind of have information, and the rest of us are just kind of, we had no idea there was going to be a meeting next week. So, and a 5 o'clock meeting, which is going to make people change their schedules. So we need this information.
Yeah, and I apologize. I thought we had that information, but I see some head shaking, so that's on me, and I apologize for that. But can we get that out to the trustees? Thank you.
Just for future, it's hard for a 5 o'clock for a lot of the public community to get here. So maybe think about 5:30, so they get off work, they got to pick up their kids, take their kids home. So that it's a little tough to be here right at 5 o'clock.
Mr. Stokes, any thoughts on changing the time? It hasn't been agendized yet, it hasn't gone out yet, right?
The meeting has not been posted yet, so we have flexibility to change those conditions.
Stacy, what would you like before it goes out on the agenda?
And that's fine. I'm just thinking of when we're starting to think of if we have these special meetings, to keep that in mind. As a person that now has daycare, and a real job, I'm learning these deadlines are a little tough sometimes at 5 o'clock. So if we can change it, that would be great. We don't have to since you've already been talking about it at 5 o'clock. So I'm just saying maybe for future reference.
I'm just wondering why it was set at 5 o'clock. That's what I'm asking Joe.
I think it was set at 5, if I recall, Dr. Oliver just thinking this was going to take a bit of time to get through. And she was anticipating about 4 hours. And so if we started at 7, we'd go till 11, which creates issues for folks. And so I believe she made the recommendation for 5 o'clock.
Stacy, would it be better if we changed it to 6 for your situation?
Not 6. I think 5:30 is
5:30?
fine. But because I mean, a lot of people work till 5 o'clock. That's all
Okay.
I'm thinking about. And if we're doing this to get public input, I think that's important to have that extra
I think
half
we
hour.
could change it since it hasn't gone out as an agenda item, right?
Mr. President, you can absolutely change it. Setting the agenda is in your discretion. It hasn't been posted yet, so it's completely up to you.
Renee, if you wouldn't mind, we'll change that to 5:30. Thank you. I think we're done for the night, right? Unless if somebody else has anything to add. Then we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting at,
Go ahead. Nope,
go ahead, Joe. Okay, we'll adjourn the meeting. It looks like it's 10:30. Thank you, guys.